At 7 o'clock p.m. in Gardner, I'm going to call Gardner City Council meeting to order. Please stand and recite with me the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It's good to see a full gallery this evening. We're going to start with a presentation. Lee Zell is here from National League of Cities to do a presentation on the Service Line Warranty Program.
Coming up.
Yes. Good evening, Lee.
Good evening, sir. Good evening, council, city manager. Thank you all for inviting me this evening. I'm Lee Zell. I'm your representative for the National League of Cities for the Service Line Program for the National League of Cities. Go ahead. Thank you, sir. This evening, I wanted to come and make a presentation to you on a National League of Cities program that's growing in popularity. We've found more and more cities that are finding the topic and discussion of aging infrastructure in the United States to be part of their city discussion. And in that discussion, we're realizing there is a great deal more to this subject than sometimes it's discussed. And it's an opportunity for the National League of Cities to lead with ideas that are solutions that help cities tackle a very expensive category and resolve a long-standing issue that doesn't resolve itself over time. Instead, it gets more and more involved. So this evening, what I brought to you, I understand from the clerk that there's a packet which you have digitally, which is fantastic. So it looks a lot like this on the outside and has some information, as you'll see, like this on the inside, just so we're on the same page. And so I'll just start by saying in 2013, the American Society of Civil Engineers put out a report, and in the report it said that our water and sewer infrastructure in the United States was rated a D+. And the National League of Cities asked us to go back out and touch base with our city partners and say, you know, where are you on this topic? Is this something that we, as the National League of Cities, should be spending more time focused on to bring information back to your cities to help you with this issue? Most cities, the conversation revolved around, the general answer was, oh, we got it. We got a 1-year, a 5-year plan, a 10-year solution. But all the conversations, when it broke down to the nuts and bolts of it, had a lot to do with what was in the right-of-way. So the conversation was, well, we're doing all these things and everything was focused on within the right-of-way. Well, a coincidence was when the National League of Cities looked at the situation, just blind to it, just bringing it up, fresh look, we just happened to look at cities in this issue and we looked at it from your geographic footprint. So it's a really different perspective, but it led us to a discovery that became very important. And that was the infrastructure that is aging in your city is truly in your geographic footprint. And for everything that cities were typically focusing on within their right-of-way, the part that we were leaving out was the aging, very aging infrastructure that is what we'll call the private side. And that means that's the sewer laterals, the water lines coming in from the city, but then returning back through the sewer laterals. And as much as a city has a budget to address that aging infrastructure in the right-of-way, residents, they see green grass and they keep it cut well, but they don't think about what's under the ground. So as these beautiful homes age, a 106-year-old home is probably well sought after, but it's because they haven't thought about what's underneath the ground that we need to take care of as well. So as we started pointing out to the cities, those lines that are underground and out of sight end up falling into pieces literally and washing down into your sewer lines, which are well maintained, but it's sort of like trying to sweep away sand at the beach. It's just not possible. There are so many homes that are continually pouring and flooding their own shards of broken lines back into your system, that it is part of the system that we have to address if we're going to get anywhere with this aging infrastructure question. So some of the other topics that we happened to run across were, so why is it that the private lines are not taken care of as well? Well, some of the topics we found were residents. They told us, well, when it comes up and I find out I have a broken water line, a broken sewer line because of age, because of tree roots, because of ground shifting, because of temperature changes between the single digits and the high 100-degree temperatures in the summer, things just change, and it changes the pipes that are connecting me to the city. And so what we saw was the issue meant that residents, when they called for help, the plumbers and so forth, contractors that they were dealing with, told them the reality. This is going to be $5,000, $6,000, $8,000 to put this back to new or to repair this. And at that moment, it was when reality is on the eyes of a family member looking at dad going, I don't have that kind of money right now. Or a fixed income senior citizen who's retired saying, I have $383. This might as well be $1 million to me. Or a low income family that says, that's the kind of money you're talking about. I don't see it ever coming to me right now. So the National League of Cities realized the solution has to be, how do we help people fix the problem, but putting it in their kind of budget? So the National League of Cities put together the National League of Cities Service Line Program, and what it does is it, quite frankly, it puts a safety net out there for any resident to use. It is optional. It is voluntary. It is no cost to the city. It does not use any city tax dollars. And because of that, it is made available to cities as a partnership with the National League of Cities. We communicate the program strictly by a letter. We work with the city to send that letter out throughout the year 3 times. We let the residents understand nationally there's an aging infrastructure issue dealing with water and sewer. Locally, your city has it under control. However, the same reasons they're working on it locally continue beyond the curb on into your property. When it becomes your property's issue, your lines have the same issues, this program is being made available to you at no cost to the city. We're not taking your tax dollars to make it available, but we're making it available as a voluntary and optional program. Those residents that say, I need a safety net, I have a problem. Quite frankly, they'll say, I have a green spot in my yard that's greener than I ever thought it would ever be, but it's sort of an early warning. They can say, I want to look into this. And on their own, they make a decision to make a phone call or look at a website. The program does not call anyone. It's strictly that letter. They can throw it in the trash just as easy. So what happens now is your residents find a solution. They find out that for $5.75 each month that they need to use the program, which they can use the program 1 month at a time. They could use it 1 month or 30 years. But for each month, they can use the water line program for $5.75. They can use the sewer line program for $7.75. And they can use the in-home portion of the program, which is water and sewer inside the structure of their house, for $9.99. So understanding they pick what they need help with, and understanding that the solution is theirs to choose. Do they want to use all these programs or just one or the other? And also understanding that they can choose to use it for 1 month or 3 months or as long as they wish, but it is a month-to-month program. So there is no requirement for them to continue with the program beyond a 1 month decision that they start by just saying, I think I want to start on this. There is no pre-existing condition exclusions. That's very important because the National League of Cities realized this is not a national program that we're dealing with brand new pristine portions of the system. More likely we're dealing with people that don't have pristine systems, and we're not looking to exclude anyone. So quite frankly, the way the program works is that resident says, I think I would like to look into the sewer line program. How do I know if I qualify? This is the real question. If you flush a toilet or run water in a sink, does the water go away? Yes, then you qualify. If they were calling about the water program, if you turn on the water, does the water come out? Yes. So we're using layman's terms to let us know the system is functioning. The quality of function is not our goal. Because again, our goal is not to exclude. Now, the next step is, so if I use this program, I sign up today, when does it start? It starts in 30 days. So the first time you sign up, you're going to get starting to take care of you starting 30 days from now. 30 days from now, if you have a problem, you make a call and a local business in your city is the one that's going to come out and take care of the work. That's how the program works. We use local city businesses to do the work. So this program is going to redirect business back to your local businesses, not take away business. The other part of that is all their work is going to be done with city permits, city inspections, and performed to city code. Basically, once the citizen makes a phone call within less than 1 hour, 1 hour is our maximum. Within the first 1 hour from the time they report the call, the issue, they have a call back from your local business plumber saying, I'm working at Miss Smith's house, I should be there in an hour and a half, is that going to be okay with you, or do I need to come at 4 o'clock? And now your resident knows something's happening. When that plumber arrives, the plumber says, I'm here, I'm starting. And they go, do I owe you anything else? No. Do I owe a deductible? No. Do I owe a one-time fee? No. There is no other fee. They pay their monthly, and that's all they have to the cost. When they're completed, the resident, 100% of your residents will receive a survey on the quality of the work and the quality of the repairs. And that's because we want to know nationally what our work is being performed like. Currently, we have above a 98% satisfaction rating for this program. In the last 3 years, if you're curious, how well is this program doing? In the last 3 years alone, the program has spent $125 million on repairs on strictly the private portion of these lines in just 500 cities. Basically, the program is there as your safety net. Any questions?
I think we can take a couple of questions from the dais. Anybody has questions for Mr. Zoll?
I just, real quick, so this is open right now to any citizen in Gardner? Is that correct?
No.
We have to vote on this? Is that?
No. I'm not here to ask for a vote. Okay. I'm assuming you'll do some research.
Okay.
So let me clarify. Thank you for that question, though. The National League of Cities, we only partner with cities on this. The program is strictly available with cities that we partner with. Okay. So we will not make this program available to any residents directly without city partnership permission. The program itself is set up so that we enter an agreement with you that lets you know that the rates that I just told you are exactly the rates that you're going to have. We enter an agreement to let you know that the communication we make will strictly be in a letter. The letter has your city logo so that it says the city knows that we're communicating this solution, and this solution is an optional and voluntary program made available from the National League of Cities for any resident as a voluntary and optional program. No resident is required to use it, but any resident that wishes to can. It also makes clear that there is no city tax dollars used for this program. So I know that I've worked with Mr. Garcia over the last year or so to make sure that it was an appropriate discussion to have. And I won't imagine to speak for him, but our conversation led us to the understanding that there should be a reason for me to come forward and visit with you, because the real interest here is to make sure that we're fulfilling the need of a community. And if there's residents that need a safety net, need a way to resolve an issue, and don't financially have that means, then that's why we have this program available. So.
But you're saying there's no income qualification,
No,
correct?
no, this is available for any resident.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And the other question I had a question too. I don't know if you were.
Go ahead.
It's really more about liability. So you're partnering with cities, and the cities will put their letterhead, use their logos and their letterhead on these letters that are going out to the residents.
Yes, sir.
There's a significant question of, and maybe I'm speaking out of turn, as our city attorney knows more about the liability issues than anybody else, but what protections does the city have from liability if they're partnering with a company? The company is doing, performing the service with local labor, but still, if there's a problem, how does that get resolved? And could the citizen actually have a claim against the city because it is a partnership?
Yes, sir. So the first part of the question is generally the agreement has within it that we indemnify the city and all employees, elected officials, and staff. So there's nothing coming back to the city. Second of all, and I'm happy to give you supporting data for this, especially for your attorney, of course, and that is that as much as that's absolutely a great point of concern, and as much as we have this program in over 500 cities for the last almost 12 years, we don't have any of those claims. But we're happy to share that. And you're fortunate, you have some cities that are very large and very close, that have very long relationship, and they absolutely have those kind of things could happen, but that's the thing. We go out of our way to make it so that we take all of those burdens, if there was one, we take those on ourselves. But that's in the agreement. That's specifically in there. So.
Now, I see Kansas City, Missouri as one of the cities
Yes, sir.
that you are in. So I'm assuming we could probably get a look at what they've done.
Yeah, so what you need to understand, and I've dealt with this in other municipalities, there are several companies out there that offer like services. And so in other municipalities I've represented, they were approached, 100% of what they're doing is on private property. And so it is, without question, to the benefit of the municipality for a property owner to have this insurance in place. But and I understand, and I've looked at the agreement here, and it purports to be a non-exclusive license. But to the extent that we are putting our city letterhead on something, I would be very hesitant about doing that with one company for the purpose of making, private profit, and not doing that for other companies out there that offer the very same services.
So you're concerned about the precedent that might be set?
Well, I wouldn't be concerned about the piece that you talked about based on the indemnification language. My concern would be, and when I reviewed the agreement, my concern was that the indemnity agreement needs to be broad enough to indemnify the city, if we were to enter into this type of a transaction, to indemnify us from those other parties who do this exact same thing if they claim that we are offering an unfair advantage to this company over the others.
Understood.
I can help you with that. As y'all are familiar with, RFPs are very familiar part of business in this country. And currently, the nearest competitor has a relationship with less than 60 entities. The third entity that would be a competitor has a relationship with less than 3. And we have a relationship with more than 500 cities. And through just myself, but recently, Peel, Arizona, Miramar, Florida, there's Newark, New Jersey, there's so many RFPs, which I would anxiously help you get their RFP results, because you will see the most common numbers, and it'll relieve you of these questions, because the common numbers are, we score typically out of 184. Our nearest competitor scores a 70, and after that it scores in the 40s for the third. And the repeat numbers that just keep coming out every time are that when we come to expertise, experience, and management of the program, the system that we have, we score 50 out of 50. And that's where the strength of the program comes forward. So I'm just sharing that, but that's...
Sure.
I mean, my point was ultimately, this is a transaction between a private company and a private homeowner.
Correct.
And what they're asking us to do is the city to step right into the middle of that and influence that decision on behalf of our citizens, rather than the citizens figuring it out in the marketplace on their own. Now, that being said, like I said, there is a benefit for providing that information. Other municipalities I've been in have adopted policies, not entered into agreements like this, and said, hey, listen, any service line companies that want to come and offer their services in our community, they're welcome, and we'll provide that information to all of our citizens, as to all providers.
If we were to open this up for an RFP, would that alleviate some of the issues, concerns?
Or can we do that? Because we're not really buying anything, are we? I mean, that's the thing.
No,
We're
we're
opening
not.
up for an RFP to let the citizens buy it.
Okay.
We could look at that.
I mean, I'm not talking about like
Is that what an RFP?
yeah, an RFP is for our own purposes, for our own
I'm the slow kid.
buying. I know, it's just, so,
The city of Independence, just on the other side into Missouri, recently went through the process, did not go to RFP, but had all parties mentioned make presentations, and made a decision to adopt the National League of Cities service line program. So I sent an email this afternoon. I apologize. I did not have the attorney's email, but I sent it to the city council, and I just shared that with you because it had the private email and phone numbers for nearby cities that are current partners, so that you could on your own touch base without us involved, and determine if those current partners could share any information that would be of assistance. So
What would prevent you from just mailing out stuff to the citizens? Or
we don't work with citizens directly. We are the National League of Cities, so this program is strictly a partner program for our member cities and for our cities that we work with. So we're not
working with them whenever we say it's okay to do everything?
absolutely, and you will have absolute oversight of the program. Literally, the letter that we send out and everything we do, you have absolute authority to stop us cold, and we want it that way. The agreement gives you that, and that's why we have an agreement with you, because when you have an open market with no oversight, then you have issues, and you can't do much except, look at the problem and wish it wasn't there. We're coming to the city now and saying, we'll be, we'll be respectful to your residents, but we're going to give you an agreement to have the authority to stop us cold. Part of the agreement that which I'd love to have a conversation, or allow your attorney to review, to point us in the right direction for this city. would allow for things like a 90-day cancellation for convenience, so that the city could say, we don't have to have a reason. We just want you to stop.
I think that's a good segue. I mean, I think that this is a good presentation, but I think that elected members need to do their due diligence. There's no action here.
Yeah.
It's just a simple presentation, so I think
sir.
we'd get back with you
No
after
problem.
further review.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you all. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Lee, appreciate you coming in.
Yes, sir.
Mayor, we've lost Councilmember Moore. I'm going to try to redial him.
Okay. Not a problem. It's the international, where is he? He's in England. It's like 2 a.m. right now. Yeah.
I'm back.
Yes, hey Lee.
Welcome.
Thanks.
Okay, so we're going to move on to public comments. Members of the public are welcome to use this time to make comments about city matters or items on the agenda that are not part of a public hearing. The only two items that I want to emphasize are that we have a clock over here on the right-hand side. This is my right, your left. And it says 5 minutes, so we want to be able to have you keep within that 5-minute time frame as much as possible. And also no profanity or personal attacks. Other than that, it is fair game. We do not have a public hearing this evening, so if you'd like to come and address the council, please come forward, state your name and address for the record.
No attacks or bad language, I promise. Hello, Council, Mayor. My name is Steve Hale, 30,000 West 159th Street, Gardner Golf Course Estates. I also might point out that my neighbor Jim Dean's here as well. He has similar sentiments as me. Jim and I are our families were the first two to purchase property from the city to be located at Gardner Golf Course Estates, and that's been 24 years ago that we've lived out there. We built our house and lived out there. We're here to tell you one thing, and that's thanks. We believe that the council made the right decision in replacing the irrigation system at the golf course and make it a 9-hole course. We certainly think it's in our best interest as homeowners that that's happened, but more importantly, we think it's in the long-term best interest of the community. Green space community green space is not something to be squandered, and we think that you're doing the right thing in that regard. We know that the situation is, or the solution is somewhat an interim solution, and a lot of financial commitment went into this, and it was not an easy decision, but we also appreciate that we think you did your due diligence. You got input from the community, you invested in a study, you vetted the topic, you proposed options, you asked questions, and you found a solution, and that's how the system's supposed to work. I also want you to know that we as residents of Gardner Golf Course Estates appreciate the communication that we've had throughout this process. On the city staff side, started with Jeff Stewart and Scott Gary, Matt McClure, Cheryl's kept us apprised of things. On the elected side, Christy Harrison, Todd Winters, and Chris Morrow have all been in touch with us, and occasionally comments with Rich and Steve and others. So we feel like we've been kept apprised throughout the whole situation. Great Life, all indications are they're a good partner. They've been out there working hard, and it's good to see some things getting cleaned up, and the clubhouse cleaned up, and the city did that old house being gone, and the golf cart barn being gone. It just looks great out there. So we think you're doing the right thing. Sometimes you don't get to hear gratitude, and just we want to express gratitude for the way this is handled and what's come down. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Steve. Anyone else?
I need a step ladder up here. Hi, good evening. My name is Jennifer Smith, longtime, lifetime resident, born here. My address is 648 South Oak in Gardner Manor, the very first subdivision of Gardner. I am here because of the proposed action of the fireworks and the extended days of that. And some of you were here 2 years ago whenever I spoke on the matter of all citizens of Gardner, not just the citizens that wanted to shoot off the fireworks, but the citizens that have disabilities, have sensory issues, the elderly, and our veterans. And also to add on, people that are very concerned about their pets, and also young children. I think as a city council, you all need to represent all of Gardner, not just a few select that want to shoot off fireworks. You know, being from here, born here, we didn't have fireworks growing up. And people did shoot them off illegally, and there were repercussions for that. If you're going to set these parameters of ordinance, I think that there really needs to be some stricter guidelines of those that are not following the rules. Those are shooting off in the street. Those that are using public property, for example, the funeral home or the hospital parking lot, to shoot those off. Those are not places where they should be shooting them off, and people were. We need to establish some sort of committee that goes around and educate. If we can't punish, we need to educate those individuals that are shooting off illegally. And this was something that I brought up to a council member that was not elected when he came by my house. So it's something that I just want to reiterate again. You represent all of Gardner, not just a few select. And not all citizens can handle fireworks day in and day out. So I just want to reiterate that, and I want to thank the chief and the police department for all their work that they're trying to do. Also, the staff that goes around, the City of Gardner staff that goes around and has to clean up the streets after people don't clean up after themselves. So, thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer.
I'm Thomas M. Hutton. I live here in town, live 613 South Hickory. Fourth generation of Gardner, and I'm not very happy about this fireworks deal that you wanted to put on. I wrote up a deal here that I wanted to write, but you already kind of shot down about half of what I wrote because you said I'm not supposed to say anything, basically what took place last year. Like I say, this upsets me to the maximum. Me, like a lot of other guys here in town, I've got PTSD. I've been made fun of, and I don't appreciate that. And I tried to, after what took place last year, I tried to contact, or I contacted the city council, brought up everything. And of course, last year we had 2 years. This year you want to extend it to 5 days, or I don't know how long you want to do it. And I think you probably want to try to do it every time somebody has a birthday party in town. And I'm not sure, I don't think this goes against anything, but when I called some of the council members last year about the problem with the noise and the size of mortars, and these are mortars, these ain't just black cat firecrackers, these are people who are shooting, putting pipes in the ground, putting them in buckets or whatever, and shooting mortars. If one of these things fall over, it's an actual mortar. It'll go right through your house, it'll blow up inside your house, and if somebody's right there, probably kill them. If it doesn't, it's going to jack them up real good. But I was told that basically if I didn't like it, I could go outside and shoot my rifle or shotgun off in the air. The response to this is what would be the difference. This type of reply to me amounts to what's found on the floor of a chicken house. There are many other people in town who have medical problems with continuous loud noises and flashes. A lot of people with pets have problems with the noises. They got to get their pets calmed down somehow. It causes, you know, go spend money for the vets or whatever. The rules are in place. They can't be enforced. You can't ask one man to go out here where they're having a party and I'm not just, you know, everybody likes to have a good time. Sometimes you have a good time doing some drinking. If you got everybody, basically, you're asking a man to holster his weapon, go back there with a bunch of people that's got, they're loaded and ready to go. And you walk back there, man ain't got much of a chance, man or woman. Like I say, last year you had 2 days, it was open season to do as you wanted. Over here, well, I won't say name the businesses, but business parking lots, school parking lots, a church, any place there was a piece of concrete poured or asphalt, you had trash. You had people going out there shooting firecrackers off, or not firecrackers, shooting off whatever. People were finding stuff on top of their homes. There were powder burns on different vehicles, stuff outside. And if the city makes any money from the sale of these fireworks, for whatever reasons, if you got to get a permit to sell them or the taxes, all that money is going to be spent up for the extra hours it takes for the patrolling the city, the fire department, and the cleanup for 5 days of people just saying, just leave it where it's at. Don't ain't no sense picking it up. Somebody else will. Last year there was a funeral, and they couldn't get out there. They had to have the city. They had to have the city come out and clean the road off so they could get out there. And I know this for a fact. The streets were blocked by parties, which people are going to go out in the front yard, and they block the street, just put their chairs out there, and having a good time. They're shooting their fireworks off, and of course, when you try to drive through to get to your house, why, of course, you upset them because you got to drive through. You drive through them or drive through somebody's yard, and then just like. Who's responsible for the damage done to property when the city says it's okay to do as it pleased? Are any of you personally making profit and or some type of gratuity from this decision on the amount of days allowed to sell fireworks? You can't leave your house to get away from the noise, because if you do, somebody might, you know, who knows what might happen. They may come over and be shooting stuff off in your front yard, or something happen to your property. You just can't walk off and leave it. You come back to ashes. And the city needs regulations on types and amounts of explosives to be sold to the public. Mortar rounds shouldn't be shot off by the guy that says, I know how to do it. And, you know, when something happens, who in the city is going to take the blame instead of trying to be popular with some people? We ought to do our job for all the citizens of Gardner. We shouldn't just try to be popular to the ones that want to, you know, have a good time. There's a lot of folks out here that.
I'm sorry, yeah.
My 5 minutes up?
Yes, sir. Thank
All
you
right.
very much. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Hutton.
Thank you, Mr. Hutton. Anyone else? With no one else coming forward, we will move on to the consent agenda. Is there any council member who wishes to remove an item from the consent agenda?
Number 4.
Councilman Gorsick wants to remove number 4. Anyone else? No other council members wanting to remove items from the consent agenda. I will take a motion to approve consent agenda items 1, 2, 3, and 5.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Melton, second Winters, that we approve consent agenda items 1, 2, 3, and 5. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Any abstentions? Consent agenda is approved with the exception of consent agenda item number 4. Consent agenda item 4, considering authorizing the city administrator to execute a contract with Darden Disposal Incorporated for the 2018 citywide cleanup for the unit price bid amount of $150 per ton. Do we have any additional items, Mr. Kramer?
Did you want to ask him
Any questions for that?
I'll start with the questions and Mr. Kramer can go from there.
Okay.
What was the tonnage cost last year and what was the total spend for last year?
Yeah, the tonnage cost last year, and Gardner Disposal on this current bid is the low bidder at $150 a ton, and that's the same price they bid last year, was $150 a ton. And last year they collected 247 tons of debris and a total cost of about $37,000.
Thank you.
Is that all your questions?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anything else from any other council member? Okay. With no one else giving questions, I will entertain a motion to approve consent agenda item number 4.
So moved. Second.
Motion Gregorczyk, second Melton, that we approve consent agenda item number 4, authorizing city administrator to execute contract with Gardner Disposal for the 2018 citywide cleanup. The new price bid of $150 per ton. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Any abstentions? Consent agenda item 4 passes. Committee recommendations. Committee recommendation number 1, consider an ordinance approving a rezoning from RP2, Planned Two-Family Residential District, to RP3, Planned Garden Apartment District, and RP4, Planned Mixed Density Neighborhood District, and preliminary development plan for the cottages at University Park, located at the northeast corner of University Drive and Gretna Street. Larry Powell, good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. What we have before you is the action of the Planning Commission that was recently taken for a subdivision upgrade or a subdivision change and rechange in zoning, and also we accepted at that point in time a preliminary development plan and a plan district for a mixed district neighborhood district plan. The action tonight, though, would just be the ordinance for the rezoning. That's the only action that's recorded or needed to be taken by council. So the background description of this is on February 27th, 2018, the Planning Commission considered 3 applications: a rezoning request from RP2 and RP3 and RP4, a preliminary development plan and a preliminary plat for a 33.639 acre residential subdivision of the cottages at University Park, and that's the name of the new subdivision. The proposed project consists of 91 lots and 160 dwelling units with common open space, pedestrian trails, and neighborhood amenities. The building types to be associated with the development, if approved, would be a detached house, compact detached house, neighborhood, duplex, and we call those twin homes now, and garden apartments in the form of single-family attached fourplex pinwheel style homes. The property was annexed into the city in 2003, and in that same year was originally part of the University Park development, which was a 157.5 acre development, and was rezoned and preliminary approved in 2003 with multiple zoning classifications and uses. And as of today, a majority of the original development plan remains vacant. A portion of that original development zoned RP2, planned two-family residential, that was planned for duplexes has been partially built out, and that would be the area along Blair Street, if you're familiar with that zone. The area of the RP2 district under consideration of this application was planned for 100 duplexes and 200 dwelling units. The new plan proposed with this application was reduce that overall dwelling unit number by 40. All the amenities are in place as far as the sanitary sewer and the electric and water and gas to the site on the property lines. Of course, the private development will continue those on into the property as needed and will develop the road system. So the proposed plan does reduce the density originally proposed in 2003, and the plan development offers greater flexibility and housing diversity. And because a plan development is proposed and a preliminary development plan establishes the approved requirements for the development, any future significant departures from this approved plan will require a revised preliminary development plan and is subject to public hearing and coming back to the Planning Commission. So as noted in the February 27th Planning Commission staff report, at the time the Land Development Code was adopted in 2016, the city created a new zoning district which we call R4. And this is the first time this application has been promulgated into a new subdivision. So we're quite excited about having the Planning Commission review it and see the advantage of allowing this, this new zoning code to come into being for this subdivision. So the staff recommendation for this was for approval to the Planning Commission with one recommendation, and that was that the pool parking lot front setback line shall be 25 feet as required in Section 17-09-04B of the Gardner Land Development Code. The Planning Commission approval deleted that requirement. They wanted to allow it to be at the same setback as the apartments that was adjacent to on the, which is 20 feet. So that is the only recommendation that was in the staff report that was a requirement. Then that Planning Commission turned that down. So other than that, the ordinance is ready for your adoption.
Thank you, Mr. Powell. I'll open this up for public comment. Is there anyone in the attendance who would like to make a comment on committee recommendation item number 1? With no one coming forward, questions? Mr. Powell? Oh, is there someone who wants to come forward?
We were just thinking there's no map. I don't know where.
Ah,
Oh.
is there additional map that?
We had one in your profile, but we didn't put one on the screen tonight. I don't know if, can you pull that up? It would be located starting north of 163rd Street. You know where the Nazarene Church is? Okay, so the University Drive starts directly north of that. It would start and follow University Drive around all the way up to where Copper Springs starts. And then the property that along there, the next street in is Blair. So it would start east of those duplexes on Blair, run over to the private homes next to Moonlight, and then south down to University Drive on the curve. It does not include 10 acres in the corner, at the corner of University and Moonlight.
And that's the RP4?
That's the that's the RP4 and RP. That would be the whole 33 acres. That's 2 zones. The RP4 would consist of everything that, if we can get the map up, not coming up, okay. I'm sorry, I should have included that. I can get you a copy of that?
It's nuts.
Okay, thank you.
Larry, the only question I had was, the Planning Commission suggested 25-foot.
No, the staff recommendation was for 25. And that's our normal setback requirement, and we had already varied that to 20 foot for the homes, because they needed to be 20 foot in order to meet the density requirements. And we were trying to set the this is the clubhouse pool area, and we were trying to set the parking lot back at 25, which is our normal requirement. Planning Commission just felt like the 20-foot sight line along the front of the buildings and everything else with the parking lot was not out of line, and they just felt like it was easier to keep that as one straight line across. And that had been a request of the applicant to keep it one line at 20 feet. And so they were agreeing with the applicant and just kept it at that level.
Okay, thank you.
Questions?
So I did read in the notes that they were planned to be sold?
Yes, all these units will be sold under the Agri rentals.
And so with their plan here with the RP3 and RP4, can they change that at will, or is that part of the original? They would have to come back to offer these as rentals, is that?
Yes, sir, you're correct. But the original preliminary plat is set up as a planned development, takes that into consideration. And so all of the demising walls between the fourplexes and the townhomes are all set to code to be fireproof units so that they can be sold as individual homes and will meet all the current code requirements.
I'm excited to see something happening out there.
I did have one question, and that was about the screening on the east side of the RP4, RP2 that goes along behind those private homes.
The existing homes along Blair?
Yes, sir.
Yes, there was.
Not the ones along Blair, but the ones on the east side of the property, which is facing.
Oh, the 3 private homes along Moonlight?
Correct.
Yeah, there's currently a rather dense thicket of trees that exist on the backs of those properties. You cannot see those houses from the property. But we will take into account any required, if we have an area that looks like it's thin, they will be required to have some plantings along back on the backside of that. And there's actually a tree planting guideline that should show that area within the planting guidelines.
Landscape plan shows it.
Yep, the only thing I would see that might be a concern might be that we're on the retention pond. That I know that's right up against that line, so I don't know if there's a lot of screening there.
We can double check, sir, but it should be, Planning Commission did take the landscaping plan into account, and it has been reviewed by staff and accepted, so it should be adequate.
Okay.
Yeah, it looks like they're screening on the west side of the pond, so
Yeah.
they would be able to see the pond, but not the homes.
Sure. Okay. Anything else? All right. Thank you very much, Larry.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it. No other comments? I'd like to entertain a motion on committee recommendation item number 1.
Second.
Motion Melton, second Winters, that we adopt ordinance number 2570, approving the rezoning case Z-18-01, a request to rezone from RP2, Plan 2 Family Residential District, to RP3, Planned Garden Apartment District, and RP4, Planned Mixed Density Residential District, and associated preliminary development plan PDP-18-01 for the cottages of University Park, located at the northeast corner of University Drive and Gretna Street. City Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilman Baldwin,
Yes.
Councilman Gregorczyk,
Yes?
Councilman Melton,
Yes.
Councilman Moore,
Yes.
Councilman Winters,
Yes.
Mayor, you get to vote on this
Oh,
one.
I vote on this too, huh?
Yes.
Yes. Ordinance number 2570 passes. Unanimous. Committee recommendation item number 2. Consider adopting resolution establishing dates and times limitations for the discharge of fireworks within the city limits of Gardner for the observance of the July 4th holiday in accordance with the provisions established in section 9.05.030 of the Gardner Municipal Code. The resolution would be number 1985. Chief Jim Pruding, good evening.
Good evening, Mayor. Gardner Municipal Code requires that the City Council establish on an annual basis the dates and times when the discharge of fireworks is allowed within the City of Gardner for the observance of the July 4th holiday. Last year, the Council approved the dates of July 1st through July 4th. This year, because the actual holiday and July 3rd are not next to the weekend, we gave a lot of consideration to the fact that we will be selling fireworks during the weekend preceding the 4th of July holiday. But originally, the consensus is that we give a weekend day. So people that want to have family and friends over and stuff and do something on a weekend. My original proposal was to include Saturday, but exclude Sunday and Monday. When I took that proposal to the Citizens Police Advisory Committee, there was discussion about adding limited hours on Sunday from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. The committee voted and unanimously approved the recommendation to do Saturday, June 30th from 10 a.m. to 11 p.m., Sunday, July 1st from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., July 3rd from 10 a.m. to 11 p.m., and July 4th from 10 a.m. to 11 p.m. Staff recommendation is that we approve Resolution 1985.
Thank you, Chief.
Sure.
Any public comments on committee recommendation item number 2?
Hello. I've got the other problem that Jennifer does that I have to lean in. My name is Heath Freeman, 602 North Walnut here in Gardner, and I'm here today to speak in regards to this action, and I'd ask that council all consider to do this as a 2-day discharge period for July 3rd and 4th. Really, after experiencing last year, I felt as though the 4 days was too much. I understand opinions will vary, and I've expressed it that way, but that's my own personal opinion. This is a time for input. I want to thank Councilmember Melton and Councilmember Baldwin for reaching out today and asking for input on this subject. And of course, I was the first to comment on Rich's on CFG today and mention the same thing, that I'd like to see it 3 or 4. And you asked for input. There's not a way to share that without someone else stepping up to. So I did want to mention that of all the posts made, that one did gather the most likes. Take those for what they're worth. It is Facebook, but it is worth sharing. There were 35 likes of individuals on there that felt the same way and thought that was the way to go. If you counted up the comments, and you'll forgive me for looking at my phone during the meeting today, but I did want to keep tabs on that. The comments on the discussion itself led to, there were 34 people in favor that thought that the 3rd and the 4th were the best way to go, versus I believe it was 24, so 34 to 24, and the 24 were either shouldn't be a ban at all, I'd like to fire it off this afternoon if I got a chance, or at least go for 4 or 5 days or as proposed. So I'm asking council tonight to look at the second and the third. Really, when it is a polarizing topic like this, and there certainly are a number of folks that would like there to not be any fireworks. Ms. Smith walked up and gave some very valid reasons why that should be the case. Personally, we're going to pop fireworks. We popped fireworks last year. We did it within the law because I don't want to be the one guy that stands up and says I followed the law when I really didn't. So I did sweep my driveway, and I did stop from doing mortars, even though I had against it, because I just don't know where they land. But when you do have something that's as polarizing as this, I think there is an opportunity for what I would simply call a common sense compromise. And when you've got a lot of folks that would like to do it for the week or more versus a set of folks that wouldn't like it to have it at all, I think 2 days is that compromise. It's very easy to do and very easy to install. And also, to Chief's point of having to have a committee meeting to talk what is our window this year, it presents itself to some consistency. The 3rd and the 4th, guess what? That doesn't move. It doesn't matter whether it's a Wednesday or a Thursday. That's the same 3rd and 4th of every year, and that's something to write into code. That doesn't need to be adapted each time out. It can be carried over from year to year, and you don't have to make the same decision, have the same discussion. It can be something in place. So this is a time for compromise. I think this is a simple compromise, and I would ask that all consider that this evening. Thanks.
Thank you, Heath. Oh, I think we have more public comments.
I did that on purpose. I knew I should have beat Heath up to the podium, but I am an 8-year Army vet. I do understand.
Name and address, sorry.
Oh, Clint Barney, 136 North Cedar Street. I'm sorry. I'm up here a lot, but I'm an 8-year Army vet, and I do a lot of work with guys with PTSD, so I understand that. It's a real concern. It shouldn't be overlooked. I have 3 valid points: consistency, enforcement, and the non-scientific poll, as one of the admins called it today on CFG. The consistency, we had it 1 through 4 last year. I don't envy you guys in your decision-making process today, but it was 1 through 4. If we keep it consistent, the guys that I work with, if we know the days, they have it in their mind, and it's not a surprise. Like the mayor's Christmas tree blowing up, shook my windows, scared the crap out of me. But I'd go away with all that mayor stuff and do the 1 through 4 because it's already been set in stone. The enforcement, if we were to go with the chief's plan, I think it would just extend it instead of limiting it. So if we do 1 through 4, put a set time on it, shrink it to 10 o'clock. But if we say we can do it Saturday, can't do it Sunday, it's going to happen. And I don't envy the law enforcement either. So thank you.
Thank you, Clint. Anyone else? Before the chief comes running back to the...
I get 3 more minutes.
Wait till you sat down. One point I'd like to make too is one of the major complaints that I got personally last year is doing fireworks on a date where people have to get up and work the next day. That's one of the reasons why the Sunday cut off at 6, and we didn't look at the 1st and 2nd because people have to get up and go to work the next day. So even though the 4th of July, a lot of people have to get up and go to work on Thursday or Friday, whatever day that's going to be this year, you know, I think that's expected, plus the city's fireworks celebration goes till around 11 o'clock anyway. So if you look at some of the information I gave you before the meeting, you know, the complaints are from 9 to midnight, and they're almost always the same. They're shooting them off too late. They're shaking my windows. They're in the street. You know, there's not a broad range there. So if you look at that time period, that's wise because people are getting up and going to work the next morning. The complaints through the day they weren't even significant enough for me to assign additional officers last year. I just kept regular staffing last year during the day because of that.
Thanks, Chief.
Sure.
Any questions from the guys?
I don't have a question. I have a proposal, but if you have
Well, I was
questions.
going to tell you, so one of the things that Norm came up with, and I don't know that the minutes reflected it well, so I wanted to clarify, he thought the 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. would be an optimal time on Saturday to spend time with the kids. So if you have smaller kids or whatever, that's a time to go out with them, because then you're not shooting out the big stuff because nobody sees it in the daylight anyway. But then it would be accessible for people who have smaller children or whatever, or just want to do something outside with them. That's the time to do the smaller fun things with your family. So that was his point on the Sunday 10 to 6 thing. So.
Okay. And we do recognize that, you know, there were a lot of issues last year with trash, with shooting them off in the street. And one of the things we talked about, we're going to make a video this year. I already talked to Danica to kind of educate people on what's allowed, because I don't think a lot of people know that you can't shoot them in the street. I think that's a natural place to go, and we're going to come up with some way they can do it in their driveway, whether they have to go get a 2x2, you know, square of plywood or something. But we're going to be more diligent this year in educating people on what is and is not allowed.
I think there was another question about enforcement and the fact that there were a lot of folks that were around the city, you know, blocking off streets, for example, and having block parties.
Well, we stopped giving permits for that. We did not issue any permits last year for the block parties based on direction I got from the council after 2015. So we don't issue any of those permits. An ordinance gives me the authority to do that, and I didn't issue any of them. I got 4 or 5 requests for the 4th and didn't issue any permits.
But there were still people who were blocking off streets.
Well, if the officers, they were instructed that we weren't doing permits, and if an officer, we got a complaint, or if they come upon that, they made them move the vehicles. That was their direction.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So, and I would say that too, I think it's time, we've had a couple years here, you know, it's the Wild West, so let's start doing, I think it's time, if people are breaking the rules and shooting off stuff at night after hours, we start writing tickets. We start telling everybody that there's a good chance you're gonna get a ticket if you're doing that stuff after hours. I mean, what does everybody else think about it?
I just think it's, I mean, you may speak to this, but isn't it really difficult to enforce that? I mean, you have to catch them.
Difficult because most of the time it's a kid that's doing it, and you know, they may, what we did in Kansas City is we confiscate what they had if we had that opportunity, but most of the time it's somebody lighting one thing in the street and running off, and there's nothing to confiscate. They're in the garage, or you know, they find ways around that. The problem for us is consistency and enforcement. You have so many people doing the same thing that if you arrest 5 people for something that 5,000 people are doing, it's just a, you know, it's a message that it's hard for people to swallow that. Even though, you know, you see that on a daily basis. When you get a speeding ticket, the first thing you tell the officer is, 5 people just drove past me, you know, so. But what we try to do, in the direction I gave my officers last year, is to just educate people on what they can and can't do versus making arrests and doing those things. And most of the complaints, I mean, it's the same thing. It's the thing, everybody knew we were going to get it. It's the trash. It's people that don't participate. They come out and there's trash all over their yard, trash in the street. You know, those are the things that we anticipated, and that's where the majority of the complaints lie.
I think it comes back to courtesy and personal responsibility. Anything else, but Randy, did you have something? Mark?
So I looked at this quite a bit because it came up a lot on the campaign trail, and I encountered a lot of people that had varying opinions. But what I did find was the overwhelming majority are in favor of fireworks. The number of days is debatable, but there's a small percentage for the 0, and there's a small percentage for every day of the year, okay? So one of the tenets, if you will, is that there were a lot of 2 days and 4 days. So what I looked at was, what if we did it 3 days as a compromise, and then instead of having it based off July 4th, it's based off the legally observed holiday. And since the rotation of the observed holiday rotates, it's a 28-year cycle, okay, for what day it's going to be. So you've got a 7th, 14% for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and 28% for Monday or Friday, okay? So if you do 3 days, everybody already accepts that if you're shooting off fireworks, that on the 4th, that's when everything's going on because the city's going to do something most likely. Everybody just accepts that. A lot of people don't seem to mind the 1 day before, even the 2-dayers, right? But I did hear a lot of complaints about work. That was the main issue, is I've got to go to work. So my suggestion of the 3 days is that the first night could be something reduced. 10 o'clock, 10:30, you turn off the news, you put out your punk. If you did that, then you'd only have to do that on, well, you could do it across the board, but if it's observed on a Monday, you have Saturday, Sunday, Monday. There's your weekend already, so it's not a big deal. If it's on a Tuesday, a Wednesday, or a Thursday, then the very first night is a work night, right? So you reduce that one. And then the next 2 end up being your 2 days, and you're leading up to your Big Bang. On Friday, my recommendation would be that you have it be Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Sometimes the 4th will be on Friday, sometimes the 4th will be on Saturday. But in either case, then you don't have any work days, if you will, that you had to worry about if you were not doing a whole lot on Thursday night. So if you reduce that first night, you still get your 2 days. It's based off the legal holiday, so we can put it into ordinance easily. Seems like a win-win for everybody.
You really thought about
Yeah.
it. I'm telling you.
I went through it a little bit.
Yeah.
Amy, can you
I'm
read
a little
that back?
confused.
Don't worry, don't worry, I got it for you.
So I
Yeah.
like where Mark's mind is, and I've got a bunch of questions myself, if you could entertain me
Sure.
while I have the floor. The permit, Mr. Powell, is $1,000 to the fireworks vendor?
Yes, sir.
In that permit, and I wasn't able to get a copy of the permit, and I apologize for my late questioning, but I would like to, through the permitting process, regulate the size of the mortar that is sold within our city limits.
It already is, isn't it?
Again, I haven't been able to see it, so I don't know.
Kansas
The
statute.
current ordinance
Now,
allows.
Kansas statute's one thing, I'm talking about city.
Yes, the
Yeah.
current ordinance follows state law, which
Correct.
allows a certain class of fireworks that the state fire marshal has approved for that year to be used by the public. If you're in the professional, in the business, you are allowed a larger class, but they are supposedly not supposed to be sold to the general public, but it'd be a Class C. The maximum mortar size for the general public is a 3.5 or 4-inch mortar shell when we're talking about that particular piece of fireworks. And the maximum charge it can have is 500 grams of powder, and that can be either a single shot charge or it can be a multiple mortar, but the maximum of the multiple cannot be any more than the single. So if you're going to regulate by size, you really are probably going to have to regulate by powder charge, because that's what I believe it's the Section 1124 from the National Fire Protection Code requires you to do. So we'd have to do some research to figure out what sizing you would want to go with. The other issue with that is of course, the people buy their fireworks almost 9 months in advance, so you've got people that have already purchased this year's items, which they may or may not be able to sell depending on what you do with sizing.
And as Mark, I was on the campaign trail and heard very similar feedback. And again, I've got a multitude of questions here. I see the state guideline as a baseline. I see the city writing an ordinance that would, just for conversation purposes, cut that in half so that we don't have such large mortars, so that we can look at our veterans, and we've got a couple of gentlemen that have served, it's my understanding. We can look at our veterans and say, look, we've cut the size of the mortar, both in powder weight as well as in size, by half, so that we can try to minimize the big bang that's upsetting the PTSD, that's upsetting autistic children, that's scaring the crap out of dogs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's my first item that I would like to see written into this ordinance, or research first. The second thing is I asked Chief Pruding what kind of overtime was spent in the last year, and just from listening to you, 0 overtime was spent.
Well, zero overtime dedicated to additional enforcement. We did spend over $3,000 for the celebration, the city-sponsored thing in overtime.
Okay.
We had 18 officers working that, and that was the cost of that for that day on the 4th.
Okay. I emailed Fire Chief Kurt, and I believe he's got his battalion chief here tonight. Did the firehouse have any calls during 2017 during the 5-day Independence celebration?
Yeah, we ran a total of 28 calls,
Okay.
only one of which was fire-related, and it was undetermined what caused it. It was just a small bush.
Okay. If we're looking to the future, and I know we just got a bunch of rain, thank God, but we were under a burn ban. As I was driving through the Flint Hills, you know, somebody threw a cigarette out and caught 10,000 acres on fire. How far in advance, Mike, do we have to make the determination leading up to 4th of July that we have a burn ban and that would affect the 4th of July celebration?
Well, we issue it day by day. So
Okay.
every morning we look at the national fire weather that's put out by the National Weather Service, and then we issue it day by day based on, you know, what the weather conditions are, the relative humidity, the temperature, wind speed. So if it's just done every morning. And based on that, if it's high and it's within the values that fire's going to start, we don't issue permits.
Okay.
So we don't technically go under a burn ban for a long period of time. We haven't in the last couple of years. It's all just been day by day.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mike. The next question I have is for Ms. Corley. What kind of revenue was generated in 2016 and 2017 from sales of said fireworks?
2016 was $4,197.04, and 2017 was $6,243.17.
So $10,000 over the course of 2 years.
Yes.
That's sales tax only though, right?
That is sales tax only.
Right.
Mr. Kramer, was a street sweeper used in relationship to the cleanup of said celebration?
No, not in public streets, and we did have at least one request to do so, and our street superintendent denied that and asked that the residents who were responsible take care of cleaning up the debris, and which they did.
So there was no overtime or what have you spent?
No, not by Public Works. Now, in relation to citizen fireworks, there was for, obviously, up at Celebration Park, both Parks folks and Public Works.
Well, that's a sanctioned event. So.
Correct.
My opinion is 2 days. That's how I was raised. My opinion is that we cut the mortar size in half. My opinion is not 5 days. We have an average of 40 complaints over the last 2 years from the chief's information that he handed out today. I represent every person, whether they voted for me or not, and I work my tail off to win this seat, and I'm not going to back down. And I don't believe that we need to have a 5-day celebration of fireworks and boom and potential of damage and fire. I mean, the list is just never ending. I'm not opposed to 4th of July, I mean, for what it stands for, but I'm opposed to how we are celebrating as a city. And as a voting member, I can't confidently or consciously vote for 5 days.
Did anybody recommend 5 days? Just out of curiosity, I didn't know who did.
I still have the floor, sir. I'm just saying, I'm not going to support 5 days. I'm not going to support 4 days. And I think we've had plenty of folks that have come up and talked to us that have some of the same feelings. We have veterans that have come up, veterans of foreign war, I might add, that have said that this isn't a good thing. And I'm not of the opinion that it needs to be any longer than 2 days.
You don't know?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
So nobody said 5 days, right? I'm just curious. I didn't know that.
Well, it was 3 days.
I'm 3 days. I mean, I'm fine with 3 days.
The resolution right now
Exactly.
before us says 4 days.
4
So
days.
Saturday
Because we have to start on the
Saturday is a
I think people
full
are
day.
assuming that Monday people would
Sunday is a limited discharge, and I'm assuming that there won't be any aerials because you can't see them anyway. But probably.
Hey, can I?
Yes.
Can I jump in here somewhere?
Surely, please.
And then I want to after.
Okay.
I
Oh, no.
And we're jumping in for Lee.
Todd, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, go ahead, Todd.
Sure.
And then we'll
So-
bring Lee back in.
Here's my thought, and I've been in favor of the fireworks. I don't know. Day one and the first time and the second time. The first time is for 2 days. The last year was it 3?
It was
4 days. 4 days.
4
Okay.
days.
And so part of that was, I was under the impression maybe we'll spread it out a little bit. It won't be quite so large on those 2 days. I still feel like it was pretty large each of those days. Yeah. So from the beginning, my thought was to go back to the 2 days as a compromise. So I just think, I feel for people that want to get away from it, 2 days is doable. But to say for 4 days, if you have PTSD, if you have animals, if you have problems, 4 days to stay away from it is a long time. That's hard to ask. And so in my mind, 2 days was a good compromise with that. And then to Mark's point, I like the logic of it. I just think it's hard enough telling people now what days they can do it, and then when we start a system and back, it just may get more confusing and people won't know which day. And I don't know. I just think the 3rd and the 4th, no matter what days they're on, you can do your fireworks. Sunday, and I do like your point about Sunday about the kids, but at the same time, 10 to 6, is it even worth for most people to shoot their fireworks off when it's
And
right out?
the concern I've got is that people will just say, oh, you can shoot them off on Sunday.
Yeah.
And it'll go after 6 p.m. It'll go at 8 to 10 to
Yeah.
11 because people are not going to know enough or understand enough that 6 p.m. is the end, and they'll just go right through the evening. That's it's tough already, and I don't know if I would accept that myself. But that,
I need to jump. Hey guys, I got cut off last time.
Yes, Lee.
We've already voted.
No.
Okay. Sorry. I just want to mention real quick on the regulating of sizes of fireworks. We don't have the expertise in the city to do that, and I don't think it's worth paying for to have city inspectors to go and ensure that the size of the fireworks are correct and each stand. I think that kind of work is best left to the fire inspectors and the state who actually regulate those sizes of fireworks. I've heard the same complaints about the size of mortars, and I'm also a veteran of a foreign war, and I also have family members and friends who suffer from PTSD. So I am sensitive to that. I also have a dog that's very sensitive to the fireworks, and I have to make accommodation for her during the fireworks. So I have those sensitivities, and even so, I understand that what the role of a city is in this kind of a thing, and I also understand from the history of this ordinance, it has never been enforceable at any time. That was what we were told in 2015 when we first talked about it. So I think the only way that we can find compromise here is with the time that we allow it, which is why that's written into the ordinance, and for us to adjust the time each and every year so that we can have compromise. So it seems to me that the Citizens Police Advisory Committee and the chief worked out what appears to me to be a decent compromise in allowing fireworks on a Saturday evening, and then on a Sunday, and then on the 3rd and 4th, right? I think that's what it was.
Yes, that's.
So then you have two evenings where the fireworks can be shot off, where it's not a work night for most people. And one evening, that Sunday evening, that is I suppose it is a night where people can they have to go to work the next morning. So they roll the time back to 6 p.m. So I really see no value in shooting fireworks myself off before about 9:30 p.m. in the middle of the summer because of sunlight. So my compromise from the proposed time that's in the ordinance right now would be to just eliminate that Sunday altogether and go with the Saturday, and then the 3rd and 4th.
So that sounds like 3 days.
I like 3 days.
But the reason I went
3 days.
with the 3 days in the way I did was, one, we can codify it easily, and two, next year when it's Thursday, you've got a bigger window in between, and then you can just always say it's these 3 days based off the legal observed holiday.
We have to change that later. We can't do that tonight.
Yeah,
Right, but that would be very simple, it's easy to follow.
Easy for you, apparently, but some of us are over here, I mean, I'm crazy.
We're gonna have an education campaign.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't have the chart in front of me, so I couldn't follow it.
I'll send it to you next time.
I'm sure there was some kind of chart or something you had, some kind of graphic.
Anyone else?
No,
All
I mean,
right.
I've
Okay, cool. I don't have a vote in this, but I also ran a campaign this last year and talked to a lot of people around the city. And it was almost unanimous from my talking to people that a lot of the citizens that were out there were just out of control when it came to the fireworks and their responsible discharge or lack of responsibility with regard to discharge. I've always maintained that with freedom comes responsibility, individual responsibility. And I saw in a lot of cases a lack of that, a decided lack of that. People shooting off in streets, they knew that the streets were illegal. People shooting off on, the apron of the driveways, and that's illegal. People going and blocking streets and creating, problems at cul-de-sacs. That's patently illegal, and yet it continued to happen. I totally appreciate the fact we're doing an education campaign. I hope it helps to alleviate a lot of those issues. Personally, I would like to see it, at least this year, rolled back to 2 days. And the reason why is because of some of the issues, the concerns, the abuses that occurred in areas around the city. I know that there was one particular incident, 173rd Street, over near St. John's Trace, where an individual actually got on Facebook and said, "Hey, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to go and shoot fireworks. You're all welcome to come out." He advertised the entire city that he was going to be breaking the law. And, that was to me, that's unacceptable. I'm sorry, but, I've got to also listen to people around the city too. And, 2 days, 3rd and 4th, I see that as a great opportunity to celebrate our freedom. You go Saturday, the folks are going to take Sunday, Monday as for granted, and they're going to shoot them off because they're going to think that all those 5 days are fair game. And I'm trying to be cognizant of the law enforcement aspect of this as well. So, again, that's my own personal feeling. You guys can choose to take that for what it's worth. But anyway.
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. 2nd, 3rd, 4th. That's my recommendation.
Then you got three
Three
work nights or three work mornings.
You got a work night there on Monday.
You have one work night. As I said, you could make
Well,
that
if you
one
work
early.
Sunday through Thursday, you had 2 work nights. I've got guys that work Sunday through Thursday for me on second shift.
Yeah, but if you can't shoot until Monday at 10 a.m., that's not going to affect somebody going to work on Monday. Most people.
Fair enough.
Right?
Still
And
with
if
2
you're
days.
early on Monday night, That's your kids and everybody else. For
think
your
there's-
work day on Tuesday, and you already have, at the bare minimum, everybody talking about 2 days, which is your 3rd and the 4th, that everybody's good with.
So there's a reasonable expectation you're gonna shoot fireworks off on the day before and the day of.
I'll second Mark's motion for 2, 3, 4.
Well, there's no.
Well, I thought he said he'd make, didn't you say that?
I move that we shoot fireworks this year on July 2nd, 3rd, and 4th.
I second that.
Well, it's not part of the official adoption of the resolution, but.
So what's the problem with shooting them off on Saturday, Tuesday, and Wednesday?
There's a motion on the floor, sir.
Yeah, there's a motion on the floor.
Oh, there's a motion. I'm sorry.
Yes, there's a motion on the floor with, to adopt resolution number 1985, establishing Monday, July 2nd, Tuesday, July 3rd, and Wednesday, July 4th. And I'm assuming that, what's the times on those, Mark?
I would use the existing times for the 3rd and the 4th. And
11 p.m.
And the 2nd would be 10 p.m.
So the 2nd at 10 p.m.
Or 10:30. I'm flexible.
The 2nd ending at 10 p.m., the 3rd ending at 11 p.m., the 4th ending at 11 p.m.
I'd be okay with the 3rd being midnight.
Within the city limits of Gardner for the observance of the July 4th holiday in accordance with the provisions established in section 9.05.030. Any discussion on the motion on the floor?
Is there a second, sir?
Yes, there is a second. There was a second by Rich Melton. Motion, Baldwin, second Melton, sorry.
I guess I would probably vote for neither, to be honest, but if I had to choose between those two, I'd say the Saturday and the 3rd and the 4th, but
I stick with 2 days.
I probably wouldn't, I'm not gonna vote for either one, but for what it's worth.
Lee, you have any discussion on this?
I would really like it to be. Most of the complaints that I've heard myself have been around I work the next day, and of course I have that problem myself, having to go to a job the next day, and it is difficult to sleep with fireworks going off until late at night, and people do shoot them after the the curfew. So that's why I proposed the Saturday, because that's really not going to bother people quite as much. And if we did that and then did the Tuesday and the Wednesday, then I think we got a good. I think that's a good compromise all the way around.
Okay.
So I'm a little hesitant on the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, even though that's simple and it's probably easier for folks to recognize, and maybe that'll alleviate the issue somewhat. But I still have that fear that since Monday's a work night, we're not really really gaining any ground there.
Okay. All right, thank you. There's a motion on the floor.
Is there, just to be clear, he said 10 or 10:30?
10 p.m.
Yeah, go with 10.
Okay.
10 p.m. Okay. City Clerk, will you please call the roll on resolution number 1985?
Councilman Gregorczyk?
No.
Councilman Melton?
Yes.
Councilman Moore?
Yes.
Councilman Winters?
No.
Councilman Baldwin?
Yes.
Resolution 1985 passes 3-2. Old business, item number 1, consider extension of the Utility Advisory Commission appointment process. And this directly impacts new business item number 3. So I just wanted to make that clear to the council. So staff recommends council extend the Utility Advisory Commission appointment process for up to 30 days until April 18th. And that's for the process, for the purpose of conducting additional interviews. This was a measure that was tabled at the last meeting, so we must take action on it today. Any discussion?
Why was it tabled?
It was tabled because there was a discussion on how, or whether or not that particular interview process should be extended, and we decided to wait until the next meeting to have that. So, we're here, we're at the next meeting.
This affects
This does affect a new business item number,
I don't see
number
why
3.
I don't see the point in tabling it, is all I'm getting at. Last meeting.
Oh, we're not tabling it now, it's
I
on the
understand that.
table.
So I'm curious if there was a reason that we tabled last time, if something has changed for why we should discuss it this time versus.
Oh, then you can just choose to dispense with it.
The reason why I made the motion, Councilman Baldwin, to table it is because, frankly, I didn't have enough information to act on it last meeting with respects to the candidate. That was the reason for my suggestion of tabling.
Okay. All right. There's an action item on this to approve an extension. If you choose not to approve an extension, you can make a motion to deny an extension.
Move that we deny the extension.
Second.
Motion Baldwin, second Melton, that we deny an extension of the Utility Advisory Commission appointment process with prejudice. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Any abstentions? Old business item number 1 to deny the extension passes. New business item number 1, consider adopting an ordinance authorizing the City of Gardner, Kansas to issue industrial revenue bonds taxable under federal law, Series 2018, USIR 2, Gardner LLC, in the aggregate principal amount of not to exceed $38 million to pay a portion of the cost of acquiring, constructing, and improving a commercial facility within the city, and authorizing execution of certain documents in connection with the issuance of the bonds at the Midwest Commerce Center. Finance Director Laurel Gurley. Nice to see you.
Good evening. So one's too tall, one's too short. I'm just right. So anyway, sorry, turned to the wrong page. Here we go. So at the October 16th, 2017 meeting, Council adopted Resolution 1974 stating the city's intent to issue future IRBs in the principal amount of approximately $38 million for Midwest Commerce second project, commonly referred to as the Excelligence Warehouse Logistics Manufacturing and Call Center Facility at 17001 Mercury Street. As noted in the second whereas recital of the attached ordinance, upon the previous approval of the resolution number 1974, Council also approved the execution of a pilot agreement providing for a 10-year property tax abatement and associated payments in lieu of taxes by the company. Council will note this language from Section 2, authorization of and security for the bonds of the attached ordinance, quote, "The bonds shall not be general obligations of the issuer, nor constitute a pledge of the full faith and credit of the issuer, and shall not be payable in any manner by taxation." Council's act of passing this ordinance authorizes both the issuance of the IRBs and the execution of all the associated documents necessary to complete the issuance of the IRBs, as identified in the fourth whereas recital, which included a briefly stated purpose for each document. Those documents were attached for Council's review, but they do not require separate action. And Bond Counsel Ellsworth of Kutak Rock and the company are targeting an April closing date, and he is here if you have any further questions.
Thanks, Laura. Any public comment on new business item number 1? No one coming forward. I also see that Phil Scaglia here is also from Ellis Commercial, and representatives from Intelligence are also here as well. So if you have any questions of them, I'm sure they'll be willing to come up and resolve them. Any comments from the dais? Lee, do you have any questions?
Nope.
It's looking good out there, Phil.
All right. If there are no other questions, I will entertain a motion on new business item number 1.
So moved. Second.
Motion Gorsick, second Melton, that we adopt ordinance number 2571, authorizing the city of Gardner, Kansas to issue its industrial revenue bonds taxable under federal law, Series 2018 US IR 2 Gardner LLC, in the aggregate principal amount of not to exceed $38 million to pay a portion of the cost of acquiring, constructing, and improving a commercial facility within the city, and authorizing execution of certain documents in connection with the issuance of the bonds for Midwest Commerce Center. City Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilman Melton?
Yes.
Councilman Moore?
Yes.
Councilman Winters?
Yes.
Councilman Baldwin?
Yes.
Councilman Gregorczyk?
Yes.
New business item number 1 and ordinance number 2571 pass. New business item number 2, consider adopting an ordinance granting to MCI Metro Access Transmission Services Corporation, DBA Verizon Access Transmission Services, a Delaware corporation, contract franchise to construct, operate, and maintain a telecommunications system in the city of Gardner, Kansas, and prescribing the terms and conditions of such contract franchise. Michael Kramer.
Good evening. So this is a franchise ordinance for MCI Metro. They're a wholly owned subsidiary of Verizon Access Transmission Services. And the purpose of this is to allow them to construct, maintain, extend, and lease and operate facilities along, across, and through and use our public right-of-ways for the purpose of telecommunication services, including but not limited to supplying telecommunication services to consumers or recipients of such services, businesses within the corporate boundaries of the city. In consideration of this, the city would receive 3% of the gross revenues and as a franchise fee.
Thank you, Michael. Any public comment on new business item number 2? With no one coming forward, questions on proposed ordinance number 2572?
Mike, I emailed you a couple of questions, so these aren't
Yeah.
a curveball. What's the projected revenue at 3%?
Yeah, typically, you know, when you're doing the franchise agreements, we don't see those numbers up front as far as, you know, any type of projected revenue or coverages. I wouldn't expect anything in 2018 particularly because there's no infrastructure in place yet. I have seen very preliminary plans for some of their fiber optic, et cetera. But.
And then I have a question after this question. But remind me what the service will provide once they install their hardware and get it all.
Yeah, and so
what does it actually do?
Their hardware itself is providing, you know, the franchise agreement is written so that they can provide local service to really any customers within Gardner, and then also use those same lines for transmission through Gardner.
So with that quick study, would you, I'm not assuming here, but if it's good enough for downtown and the business community, would it be fair to think that they could set it up in the residential community with the same type of structure and et cetera?
Yeah, and again, I would say that they could, and the franchise agreement allows them to do that.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Gorsick?
Yes.
One of the things that not just Verizon's trying to do is the towers are going away for cell phones. So with the 5G, it's the repeater type of thing. So it would be based on what they're trying to figure out for signal strength and whatever across the area.
Yeah, I did some research and talked to some folks out at Sprint and CenturyLink, and they gave me some similar feedback.
Yeah.
So.
And this, according to my understanding, is not wireless communication related.
This is not wireless communication.
Correct.
Not their new 5G.
No. It may be used to support some of that, but you know, this is
This is for the fiber, but they don't want to run the fiber and connect to it at the light poles, or?
They have not asked for that at this time.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not-
This is more as a local service provider agreement, and
Correct.
Ryan may have additional input on that, but.
Okay. All right. Any other questions on ordinance 2572?
Thanks, Mike.
Yep. I would entertain a motion on new business item number 2.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Moore, got to get you on one of these. Second, Gregorczyk, that we adopt ordinance number 2572, an ordinance granting to MCI Metro Access Transmission Services Corporation, DBA Verizon Access Transmission Services, Delaware Corporation, a contract franchise to construct, operate, and maintain a telecommunications system in the city of Gardner, Kansas, and prescribing the terms and conditions of such contract franchise. City Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilman Moore?
Yes.
Councilman Winters?
Yes.
Councilman Baldwin?
Yes.
Councilman Gregorczyk?
Yes.
Councilman Melton?
Yes.
Ordinance 2572 passes. Business item number 3. Consider the appointment of Gary Williams to the Utility Advisory Commission. I was part of the interview process along with Councilmember Gregorczyk and Councilmember Baldwin. We had one person who was not appointed to another committee who was interviewed, and that was Gary Williams. So the interview team unanimously at the time recommended the appointment of Gary Williams to Utility Advisory Commission for a term expiring on January 2019. Is there any public comment on new business item number 3? No one coming forward. Any questions on this item? Okay, well then I will entertain a motion on new business item number 3.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Baldwin, second Melton, that we approve the appointment of Gary Williams to fill the vacancy on the Utility Advisory Commission with the term expiring January 2019. I'll authorize you to do it. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Any abstentions? None heard. Welcome Gary Williams to the Utility Advisory Commission. New business item number 4. Consider the appointment of a Parks and Recreation Director. I believe that you wanted to have a couple of sentences. City Administrator Harrison Lee?
I would. Mayor and members of the
Great.
council, like to have a couple sentences. The city's code indicates that appointments for department director level positions shall be appointed by the city council upon recommendation by the city administrator. Tonight I'm recommending the appointment of Jason Bruce. He started with the city in 2003 as a recreation supervisor. He's a graduate of K-State with a Bachelor's of Science in Parks and Recreation. In social science, his emphasis has been on Parks and Recreation. Prior to that as well with the city of Manhattan and the city of Salina. Recently the city instituted career ladders, and so we talked about retention of our employees and promotion of our current employees, and this is an opportunity to promote one of our internal employees.
Great. Any public comment on new business item number 4? With no one coming forward, any comments, questions, thoughts? Go ahead.
I'm happy to see that we're exercising that internal vertical promotion. I know professionally at work, I try to shop in-house because we already have an investment in the employee. It shows others around them that opportunity exists. Our learning curve is much quicker and not as steep. And it really just continues to tell our story, if you will, that there is light at the end of the tunnel through hard work and diligence. So I appreciate this opportunity.
City Administrator, is it safe to assume that by this promotion that we're going to shift gears from looking for this position for a replacement for his current position?
I actually think we have an opportunity to look at the Parks and Rec Department, and particularly in light of the fact that you've asked that we have a joint meeting with the school board staff, and we've talked about that, and so we're going to be taking a look at it as we look at where we might go with the department. So I'm not inclined to just simply start backfilling positions until we have more dialogue with you all about that.
Thank you.
Tom, you have anything?
No, I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, it's great. I just wanted to commend the way the whole process went on. I mean, we did look outside. We also settled inside, and I think that's important. As Councilman Gorsuch said, it's good to show loyalty to those who show loyalty to us. And I know that Parks and Rec has had a rough go in terms of just controversy and things like that, but in the midst of all that, they pulled off one of the greatest events that we've ever seen in the city, with the Grand Slam Beer and Wine Festival and the Stroke of the Trails, and you know, Jason was a critical part of that, and so I feel like we're doing the absolute right thing to promote one of our best and brightest into that position. So I'm looking forward to seeing what we're going to do next. With that having been said, I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
So moved.
Motion Moore. Oh, come on. Second Melton.
Here, here.
That we approve the appointment of Jason Bruce as the Parks and Recreation Director. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Any extensions?
Yeah, right.
Welcome, Jason, to the hot seat at Parks and Rec, and we're looking forward to seeing some great things. Thank you. All right. New business item number 5. Consider approving the addition of 1 full-time employee to the Police Department's 2018 budget for the purpose of hiring 1 police officer. Chief Ruding.
Thank you. As I've discussed with council in the past, staffing is always a challenge. It grew more so this year with the departure of 3 of our officers, 1 through retirement, and 2 to other departments. In February, PO Adam Taylor was deployed, and he will be gone from, actually he left on the 15th and will be gone until May 11th of 2019. That creates a hardship for me. As I've adjusted to our reduction in staffing, I've had to remove a detective from investigations. I've had to move people around just to try to cover minimal staffing. And to accomplish that in the end, we utilize overtime, and there's no margin for me to even be down 1 officer to accommodate training, to accommodate any of the vacation that I have with my officers. This proposal is to create a position to leave open for P.O. Taylor, and so that I can return to full staffing if hiring allows. And then P.O. Taylor, when he returns, he would be an additional officer for me. We wouldn't see that in the budget until mid-2019. It'd be a half a budget year then. Wouldn't see the full budget till 2020. I can use that extra position for a number of things, either investigations to cover overtime. There's a proposal to start a drug task force in Johnson County that I'd like to participate in. So there's a number of needs that I can address with the additional officer in 2020. And I'm requesting approval to add 1 full-time officer to the police department's budget.
Great. Thanks, Chief. Any public comment on new business item number 5? No one coming forward? Questions for the chief on this? It's pretty cut and dried to me.
Totally unrelated. Is P.O. Taylor the only officer we have deployed currently?
Yes. And my understanding is that after this, that'll be his last deployment. Because he's going on this, he won't ever get deployed again.
Is he already in theater over there, or is he stayed since?
His training was until March. Actually, he probably left a couple days ago.
I was going to say, I hope he's not watching, but I would say, well, why don't we have something where we get a whole bunch of citizens together and send him some well-wishing cards, and I think that would be fun for him.
Care package?
Yeah, I mean like a big one, like a really big one from a lot of citizens.
He hasn't been here that long.
Now you can
He's
make
been,
that
he's
your
been a great addition
project
to the
manager.
department.
I'll
He
do
really
it.
has.
Confiscate a mortar ship.
I'm sure there's some international there we're gonna get in trouble for.
So Chief, I fully support the addition. I just have a question.
Sure.
I don't know if you or Laura can answer it, but so you're paying the new officer X wage. What is the markup on that wage? Or what's the overhead, I should say? Is it
You
around
talking about for
60?
benefits?
Yeah, benefits, I'm sorry. SG&A,
Yeah.
60, 65%, is that right?
Yeah, we figured that, and that's part of what's down there for the 70.
Okay.
So,
I just didn't. That's fine, 60, 65%. I saw your head go like this. 60.
58
Okay, so 60% for a police officer.
and how we did this is not based on starting salary. The last officer we hired came in, I think, at a year 3 or 4 salary based on their previous experience. So we just took that last officer and then added the benefits to reach that figure.
And that
So
was
it's
my
an
next
estimation.
question.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So 60% on benefits.
And we are making progress in staffing. We've got, we are currently 2 down. We have 1 person that we're hoping to be able to hire in June. And then we'll start looking for that other officer if this gets approved.
Thank you.
So, you're welcome.
Anything else? Okay. I'll entertain a motion on new business item number 5.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Milton, second Winters. That we approve the addition of 1 full-time employee to the police department's 2018 budget for the purpose of hiring 1 police officer. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? None. Then new business item number 5 will pass. Now we're off to council updates. Hopefully it won't take an hour tonight. All right, staff, anything for council? I'll start with the chief.
Nope, I don't have anything.
All right, city clerk.
No, sir.
Finance director Gurley.
No, sir.
Legal.
Yeah, I wanted to give you an update on the golf course. So we've exchanged drafts with Great Life. We, in working with bond counsel as well as our financial advisor, based on the structure that I think both Great Life and the city want to see, we're probably looking, whereas before we were looking at a tax-exempt financing for the debt out there. Because of the structure, it's probably going to be a taxable type of structure. The net effect of that is, whereas before we were looking at about $135,000 a year, it's probably going to be like $140 a year for the 1.1. I think that was in the range of what we were talking about at the last meeting. We said 135 to 140. So that we are working parallel tracks on both the operating agreement, getting that to finalization, getting the financing in place, and working up RFPs so that we can timely meet Great Life's deadline of having irrigation in place by June 1. We've also been working with finance, our bond counsel, Parks and Rec folks. This isn't normally how you do it. You have the agreement in place, and then you move to financing, and then you move to RFP, but we're having to kind of compress those. So I'd be happy to take any questions that any of you might have on any of it.
So Ryan, we're taking a non-traditional route, which is, I think, fine, because the outcome is what's desired by council as well as the public. How soon can we expect to see that in advance of June 1st for review so that they can move forward?
So in terms of the operating agreement, if we know we're looking at a taxable structure, I'm hopeful we can get that before you at the next meeting.
Oh, wonderful.
But in terms of the actual financing documentation, we're right, probably the first meeting of May, and the way the timing will work is because we're running concurrently with the RFP process is we will likely go ahead and award the RFP to get the irrigation contractor commenced by May 1 so that June 1 we can have the greens up and going, which is what Great Life was looking at. And Laura shockingly said she was perfectly fine with that and us bearing those costs if she knows for certain she's going to get reimbursed. And so that's what we've talked about. Laura, you can add any misrepresentations I made about your feelings.
Yeah, and when he says reimbursed, let's be clear, it's not reimbursed from the golf course
Right.
or the Great Life people. It's, I want my bond proceeds before the year closes because I don't want to have $1 million shortfall anywhere.
Right.
So, and I will also, while I'm here, I guess, because this compression on the debt sale, heads up, it's going to be like first meeting in May. We're working towards that for your notice of sale. And we probably are looking at June for the, I think it's going to be a little bit non-traditional. Think about your land purchase for your 15 acres along those lines.
Yes.
So, and we might be doing the Justice Center at the same time. So heads up on that too.
Ooh, you're busy.
Always.
And only the 2-year budget, yeah, that thing.
We don't need to lose you. The other question I had for you, Ryan, is how about operationally? I know finances are a necessary evil, but operationally, are we going to be able to see what that operational contract is between the city and Great Life?
Yeah, I will. I mean, as soon now that we kind of know the financing structure, because that was kind of. Yeah, well, we know it's going to be a taxable deal, so that makes it easier. So now that we know that, we've had some pushback from them on transparency and some standards and other things like that, and so we're going to give them our comments to their comments, and we will certainly try to get them in the packets in time for you to have a finalized agreement before the next meeting.
Let me have an off conversation with him. Amy's not going to be here. Maybe it's a second meeting. I don't want you to overpromise.
Laura says I'm overpromising.
Happens to the best of us.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a second meeting.
I mean, the good news is we've had 2 rounds. So at this point, our original draft, their red lines, and now that we know the answer from bond counsel about the financing structural issues, bond counsel's looked at it. So now that we know that, we can shoot back our response. It can hopefully start to move a lot more quickly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Don't be surprised if we.
So second meeting in May would be the operational piece.
April 15th.
April 15th, I'm sorry. Isn't that tax day?
That's a Sunday.
Sorry, 16th.
16th, okay.
That's still tax day this year.
Yeah.
Well, it is, but I mean, that's traditional days.
Thank you, Ryan.
Anyone else? Questions for Ryan? Okay. Gons.
Early this year, I gave an update on a project, the backfeed project from Fairfields to Sheens Crossing. It's my understanding that the city met with the owner and he agreed he was going to request rezoning of his property and then he will grant us the easement. As of today, he has not done anything about it. So I'm looking for is the direction how to proceed.
Is this the easement that's down the Locust, down Locust Street, or is this?
It'd be Poplar.
Poplar.
It's Poplar? Okay. So that's on the back side of
Yeah,
that
it's on the
property.
west side of our
Yeah,
property.
Yeah, okay.
Any feedback from Larry Eugene? Oh, I'm sorry, Rich.
Yeah.
I was just gonna, Larry looked like he was making
Yeah.
some hand motion.
Larry, you have more information on this?
At that meeting previously, we were directed to ask the property owners to follow up with it, and we did that, and we've not heard back. I just wanted you to understand that the city did make efforts to have further discussion with the property owners in this regards, and we were directed, if they didn't get an answer, to come back to you. So that's why Gons is making the request to proceed with the condemnation as the next step, if you see that as where we should be going.
Did we ever get a response, like of any kind from the folks?
No, we did not.
Jerry, right, the property owner? Okay, so your recommendation then, Gons, Larry, city administrator, would be to start condemnation proceedings on that easement?
Yes, sir.
Well, it's critical infrastructure. I mean, it's the tie-in to our, to our electrical lines, so we need to have that.
Was there any feedback from EUB or any history on that since you're a former?
So this project was approved last June, and then I brought it up at the end of last year, how, what's the status on all of our projects? And then we looked at it, and I informally brought it up in, Gons brought it up in the January meeting, and I asked the members of the UAC what they thought. We didn't take an official vote. I would say it was 50-50 to maybe 70-30 in favor of condemnation, because we are leaving that entire subdivision and Orchlands and everything in that area with only a single line.
Yep.
And this is preventing a backfeed that would be very beneficial if something happens.
What was the suggestion of the 30%?
They just didn't say anything.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think the biggest concern about this is that we are going to have more development in that area, and it's not just a backfeed issue, but also a capacity issue, isn't it? I mean,
well, it'll tie into 42, which goes along I-35, so it does help in that regard.
Yes.
And the key here is that I think everybody has to be clear that when we say condemnation in this case, we're just getting an easement. We're not taking anyone's property.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's just.
Are we doing overheads? Or are we doing underground?
This is overhead back here.
Yeah.
Right.
There's no other route. It's maybe slightly longer.
Not really.
No. Tried talking to the property owner several times.
And right now, that property is not developed. There was a willingness expressed by the property owner to develop that land into multifamily types of dwellings, but there hasn't been any subsequent discussion, correct, on that? So.
Yes, sir. They've decided to just put the property up for sale. The last conversation we had with them, which was about 4 months ago now, and not develop it themselves. So it's still available for development. This would be what would be called the Fairfield subdivision.
This is this is right on the edge of Edgerton and Gardner.
Okay.
It's right behind all those cul-de-sacs.
Okay, right. Okay.
It's essentially, if we ever put in a poplar from 183rd south,
Right. That's where.
it would be in the road. We'd already have that right away because of the road.
Okay,
I'd
so.
like some more information on that, if we could. I mean, just for me personally, I'd like to see a map and.
Is there a possibility that we could have some more information on that for a next meeting?
Yes, sir. That's possible.
And then we could have a council action form on condemnation. Is that?
That's fine. I don't disagree. I was just going to ask, is this a time-sensitive issue? And again, I'm not flying in opposite direction of Councilman Melton, but is this a time-sensitive issue, or is this an issue that just needs to be resolved after some amount of time of talking about it?
Since we don't have additional development over there right now, it's not a capacity issue.
Fair enough.
I'll leave that to Gons if he wants to change that statement. But we don't have that backfeed, so tomorrow.
I got it.
But it's not imminent.
But there's also a chance that there's going to be some development there very, very soon in the future. And if that's the case, we do need that line.
Can't lose it.
Yeah. So that's why I'm saying.
However, we could wait until next meeting.
Yeah, we'll wait till next meeting. We'll have a presentation, we'll have a condemnation CAF
Yes,
written
with the
up,
resolution.
and then we will we'll just manage it then. Okay.
Gons,
That sound good, everybody?
Gons, what you sent me would probably be helpful to them. What I requested in December or January, that information, that map, and showing where Circuit 42 goes.
Okay, I'll present that in the next meeting.
Actually, if you could just send that out a Friday minute memo, that might be the best way to go. Everybody's gonna get it then. Okay, great, thanks. Larry Powell.
My thanks to the council for the action taken tonight for Midwest Commerce Center. They're very anxious to proceed, of course, and bond counsel is ready to do that. So you will be getting, the mayor will be getting documents, of course, to sign and so forth, but that will officially help them finalize anything else that's outstanding with the leaseor. Just on that same topic, until the rain, they were moving forward fairly quickly. They had gotten to the point where they were doing the underslab plumbing and foundation work, so that they probably have some water and trenches out there tonight. But other than that, things were moving very, very nicely out there. They had actually made up some lost time, so they were pretty much on a break-even basis now at this point in time of that project. So in about 2 weeks, they will actually, if it doesn't rain anymore for the next 2 weeks, and we have a couple of days to dry out, in about 2 weeks to 3 weeks, you'll actually start seeing a lot of concrete going down out there for the floor slab, and then of course they will then move on to the walls and do the tilt-up. This is a tilt-up combination. If you've not seen any of the structures over in the LPK Park, this will be very similar in style and the way it's constructed over there. Again, it's a 646,400 square foot building, and it does contain both office, logistics, and some small manufacturing line inside. So it'll be a very worthwhile project, and again, we thank you for that. Along the same lines, Hampton Inn's moving along well. They had also pretty much made up the lost time that they had lost with the cold weather, laying all the block that you see out there. So they have both the stairwells and the elevators in place now, and most of the red irons in place on the conference center. They will actually be starting on the second floor again when the rain quits in about a week, and so you'll start to see that structure goes up. It is a 5-story structure, so it will be the tallest thing in town at that point in time. Just as a point of clarification on Popular Street and the easement you just talked about. The streets, of course, are not platted for that because that property is not platted. In theory, it would run relatively close to where we would do the easement. Our easement will be along as I understand it, along the west property line, and there would be a regular easement, permanent easement for the electrical line, and then, of course, I'm assuming a construction easement of some type also adjacent to that, temporary construction easement, so that you can put the line in. And that will be getting, it is important because we are expecting additional applications probably not next month, but in April for additional housing down in that area. So I'm not sure exactly what the size number of that will be, but it will be important that that backfeed's in place by the end of the year if possible. So it does help us to be thinking along those lines. So we are kind of running out of time in this regard. So and I think that's about it for right now.
Okay, thanks, Larry. City Administrator Harrison Lee.
Yes, I have an update on intergovernmental coordination. Last week, we had an opportunity to meet with the fire district staff. Business and Economic Development Director, the Finance Director, and I had an opportunity to meet with the fire chief, his battalion leadership, his chaplain, his deputy, staff to talk about the development that we have going on. Gave them an overview of the work session that we had with council on the growth management projects, the activity that we're looking at on the east side of the interstate. We talked about location of fire station, opportunities as we look at development, how we might be able to partner with them to assist them in making sure that as we look at new projects that we are considering helping them with location of a fire station as well. And we agreed that we would kind of go back at the end of 6 months and kind of give them an additional update just so that they're current on what we have as we continue to move forward with economic development opportunities in the city.
Okay, great. All right, anything from council for staff? I'll start on my right with Councilman Baldwin.
No, my question was about Circuit 42.
Okay, great. Councilman Gregorczyk.
I don't have any further questions. I just want to say thanks for answering all the questions that I had in relationship to the agenda. I still stand by my vote of no in support of 2 days of fireworks, but so be it, and we'll come back to it next year. So thanks for everybody's help.
Councilman Winters.
Just one more time, congratulations to Jason. And I've known Jason for quite a while, since I first moved to town. He would corrals me into donating a little bit for the Parks and Rec Department every once in a while, but I think it's well deserved, so congratulations.
I'll second that. Council Vice President Melton.
Quick question for the governing body. You all see the survey that came out for the budget question? Did you guys see that?
Yeah.
Lee, still with us?
Yeah,
Did you see that?
I did see it.
Did anybody, were you contacted about it at all? Or did you offer any questions for it?
I had an understanding that there was going to be a survey that was going out. Did not know what the composition of the survey was. Not at the time, anyway.
No.
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 What was your question?
Did you have any input on the questions or anything? Did you know?
No, sir.
Okay. And then, I guess that was it. I just wanted to find out if anybody else.
Yeah.
Because I'm guessing you didn't know it was coming out then either. Were you contacted when it was sent out? I guess it'd be the final one.
I think that the public was contacted, and we were contacted when the public went out. But,
Right.
But
I understand.
yeah,
That's why I asked.
Yeah, Laura. Yeah, because I know that you were involved with that.
You didn't ask a question, but I'll give you the background on what those questions were from. They came directly from your November work session for your strategic plan where you played Jeopardy and you did all that. Those are the same questions except for the one about the airport, and I'll tell you why I did it, why we went over these questions. For the most part, I went through every single question, and then I went over them with City Administrator Harrison Lee, but all the questions that you were asked and you responded to in November, you've already provided direction for when you passed your strategic plan. And we talked about that at the last meeting when I gave that presentation. So the only ones that were left were the ones that were asked because on those, council's responses were mixed or not completely, not direct. So the questions were rewritten to perhaps drive a more helpful consideration for you all to consider, maybe perhaps when you prioritize the rest of stuff. And I actually wrote a note on what ones that was. I have them marked. The questions, it's hard to do with my thumb the whole time. Thanks, Ryan. Okay, the question, you had a question where it was extremely mixed, your responses, about promoting the downtown sense of place. I enhanced that to say fund it, not promote it. So I thought that would help give you some better input. There was the questions about take care of what we have before we do anything new. Council's responses on that were 3 neutral, 1 strongly agree, 1 agree, and 1 disagree. I thought that would help you. And the airport, yes, thank you. The airport question came up just because you brought it up that very night. So, and there was a lot of discussion about we should be doing investments out there. So that question was derived to help you. And I would have included one about golf course, except you already gave direction. So I was kind of out of things to ask. You've already given all your budget policy direction, plus you still have your citizens academy, or not academy, citizen committees that are providing direction. And we went through that whole thing about you spent the last 5 years creating the plan. And now the questions are you funding the plan? That's where we're at. So that's the reasons for the questions.
Yeah, I didn't have any, go ahead, I'm sorry, ma'am.
Well, I just wondered,
Okay.
I wondered, my main reason for
Okay.
asking was, because we didn't know any of that, and people are asking me, hey, how do we come up with these questions? And I'm like, I don't
Okay.
know. You know, because I have nothing to tell them, and I don't know where you got them from. I don't know where they came from. So I wanted to just find out how that came about. Now it makes sense.
Okay.
If we'd have got that ahead of time, that would have been a good idea, because when citizens call me and I have to go, I don't know, you know, it's just one of those things where they're going, well, who's asking? I don't know. So I figured I'd ask you.
Yeah, I think some proactive communication here might have probably done us some good. And we'll, point taken, lesson learned, we'll move forward fix that the next time. Yes?
I didn't have an issue with the questions. I'm not going to sit here and say that I remember everything that Laura just reviewed, but several of them, you know, a light bulb went off in my head, but, you know.
Sure.
As for citizen feedback, I got a couple of handfuls. It was less about the type of question and more about how are you going to fund it? Are you going to tax me? Those types of things. But it wasn't the quality or type of question.
Yeah, I think the question I got was more than anything else was why haven't we had a citizens budget form? and that's really the, you know, because this is the second year in a row now that we have not. And yes, Laura.
Would you like me to weigh in with some stats on that?
Yeah,
sure.
Okay, I do have some stats. So in 2015, we had a citizen, oh, thank you, Ryan. He's so nice. In 2015, we had a citizen budget forum and we had 21 attendees. And so that's medium response, right? 21 live people that weren't staff.
Yep.
In 2016, by going to online, you had a 10-fold increase for 234 respondents. And then last year, you had 523 respondents. So it was, you get far more input from your online survey. And again, this year, the reason why we didn't have it, and you are certainly welcome to proclaim otherwise, but the reason why you have it is, as I stated in that presentation, there isn't that much more to talk about. You're working the edges now. You're talking about FTEs and vehicles, and you're always welcome to take input. You're getting it still, but
yeah, I guess
the
thing that was a concern that people had expressed with me was the lack of a free form field where a question where they could just say, where they could ask questions of us and ask, and try to get some responses. And the other thing was, an informational session regarding the budget, especially when you're going to a 2-year budget, which is a different process than year to year, would be good for the community to be able to get.
And the mayor, look at that.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah. I mean, just and so I wanted to get staff's feedback on that.
Well, actually, okay. So on the 2-year budget, what you're really doing, because you've spent an extensive amount of time planning, and you have a lot of plans, at the expense of not just over-planning your community and not looking at implementation, what you want to do is start to look at how you're going to fund, how you're going to implement some of those plans, how you're going to program. And so the most effective way to do that is to look beyond just kind of 1 year, look at 2 years.
Sure.
So it's the same process. You're just making a commitment for a longer period of time, particularly when you start looking at long-term goals like infrastructure on the other side of the interstate, you're looking at annexation. Those are not 1-year type projects. So this gives you an opportunity to be proactive and look at making sure that you have a plan to move forward with some of the things that you've identified. Yeah, so the process is the same. It's just, the process is the same, the timeline is the same. It is more of a visionary approach to looking beyond just a year.
Yeah, and a lot of private companies, investor companies, go to 5-year strategic budgets for that.
Some of them go, like the city of Olathe did a 2-year budget. I don't know that there are a lot of cities that do it here in the Johnson County area. I know that Olathe did one. They were in their second phase of doing another 2-year budget. Very common on the East Coast to see 2-year budgets where you have high growth.
Great.
So can I speak real quick?
Sure, Lee, come on.
One of the questions that I got emailed to me was, what's the difference between using tax dollars to improve and maintain, or investing tax dollars to maintain what we have before building new improvements? And that was I believe question number 3 on the survey, and question number 4 was using tax dollars for improvements at the Gardner Municipal Airport is a good investment. Do you agree or strongly agree or whatever? What's the difference between those two questions? Because the Gardner Airport is currently owned by the city. Currently, it is our responsibility to operate that airport. So, how is that not? How is that differentiated from question number 3?
Sure, Laura.
It was just more specific because it came up at the meeting very specifically, and I was just trying to give council more input and more help. And the other one was from the November retreat.
So we're
it was
prioritizing current improvements is basically what you're saying versus not.
Right, it's more looking at the core of it's more looking at the core of the city versus an expansion into new areas. When you start to look at taking care of what you have, it's more of the infrastructure that's already in place as opposed to investing in new infrastructure.
Right, and that's why that.
I think we just lost Lee again.
I will say that I think that ahead of time would be great, and because as I was going through the questions so that I would know what they were, so that when somebody asked me, I know what's going on. I didn't have any option to basically not put in feedback one way or the other, and I didn't want to sway the results because I'm going to digest them. But I didn't have a good way to do that without going through the process and then saying, well, I'm done because I don't know what's the last question, and avoid this. So if I knew them ahead of time, then I'd just read them and I wouldn't go through the process.
Hey, Lee, I hear you.
Yeah, I'm back.
Okay.
I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
But what I was saying was the airport is existing infrastructure within the city, so that's why I think I got that question.
Sure, sure. I don't think it was a matter of being mutually exclusively as much as it was just prioritizing what areas of infrastructure we want to focus on. You know, new versus existing.
Yeah, but that unfortunately we didn't go into any other detail on any other infrastructure other than the airport. So it looks to the airport, the people that are interested in the airport, some of our hangar patrons and so forth. It looks to them as if this question was sort of it was either just put in there superfluously or there's some other reason for it that's probably not helpful to the airport.
Understood, and that's it's understandable. We just got to communicate that back to the folks on the airport board.
Yeah.
Again, they feel like sometimes they're a little marginalized, so that may have been that may have had a negative effect on their perception, but we'll work through that.
Yep.
All right. Anything else?
Is it my turn?
Yeah. It is your turn. Yes.
Oh, okay. The only thing I had was I also got a request to update the website to reflect when the next airport board meeting will be held.
Yeah.
As well as one individual from the Vintage Aircraft Association has volunteered to help the city update airport information on the website and express some interest in perhaps putting on some airport history to go along with other content that we might have, because our airport is one of the oldest airports in the state of Kansas, and has a history with the airmail routes, as well as as an auxiliary field for the pilots that trained during World War II. So there's some really interesting stuff that would probably be helpful to have on our website for the city.
That'd be great. And we're always talking about trying to publicize events at the airport. I know that
yes,
you know that having events on the calendar would be a good thing.
I just wanted to mention not this past weekend, but the weekend before last, the VAA hosted an event along with Garmin and a few others that brought in several hundred people to the airport. It's a Young Eagles flying event, and it had a women in aviation focus this year, and actually they're doing, I think they're going to do 6 more this year of these types of events for with various focuses. But it's all about getting kids involved in aviation, getting them up and flying. They actually sign up and wait in line, and actually during the wait and during this time they had a pancake breakfast as well. So they were feeding everybody pancakes and talking about airplanes and had just a lot of kids there. When I was there, there were more than I learned from my Garmin colleagues that there were more than 100 little girls signed up to go up for a free flight in a volunteer's aircraft.
That had to be fun.
It's a great event. It's a lot of fun for pretty much everybody, and so it's one of those things that just kind of makes this airport really stand out and shine for us. So
Yep.
brings in a lot of external interest to the city.
Yep, and the first Saturday fly-ins, when they open up the hangars and take kids up in trainers. Actually, my son went there once and went up in a trainer. Cheryl, did you have?
Oh, I was just going to say we can have our communications manager work on kind of helping get the word out for events like that for the airport.
Great.
So Lee, did you get any feedback about the restroom facilities at that weekend event 2 weeks ago?
No, the VAA hires and pays for with their own funds, and that's all donations, by the way. They pay for their own porta potties.
So I guess my lead in was, where are we at with the restroom situation on a day in, day out basis?
They're still using porta potties out there, and it needs to be addressed.
I think we need to get it on the agenda and make some choices. I mean, if we want to promote it, and I think Lee is 100% right, we want to promote it, we've got to be able to have the facilities to support it.
So what we need is a proposal from Public Works on getting it done, like a real concrete proposal. I know we've done some research on it, but I think we need to have an actual proposal with a council action form to make that move forward.
And I would really suggest that we self-perform this. We have the equipment, Gons has the equipment, horizontal drilling, et cetera. I mean, we've got guys that we're going to pay 40 hours during the week for one project or the other. I think, investing in our own community is a feel-good project.
I would point out also that we do have a pool of volunteers in the VAA. And from among the hangar tenants.
I agree.
So let's get it done.
I agree.
So be it.
Yep. So let's get cracking on that and have. I know that we've done a lot of that legwork already. Let's just package it up and bring it to the next meeting. Okay, great. I think that'll be very good, and that'll be a very excellent gesture of concern for the folks out at the airport, and I think we need to get that done. All right, a couple of things. One is that we've got some big meetings coming up this week. I and Council Vice President are going to be meeting with the developer tomorrow on development on the other side of I-35. We've also got a meeting with the governor, Governor Collier, Kansas Department of Transportation Secretary Rich Carlson, our two state senators, our state representative, and liaison from the Sheriff's Department, Greg Smith, to address funding issues for the Gardner Road interchange. And our plan is to have a funding mechanism secured for the bridge deck.
And when was that second meeting?
That's going to be tomorrow morning, 8 a.m.
Where at?
At the governor's office. Yep. So we're going to, I already told people I'm not going to leave there until I get money. So,
take your lunch.
It's like I hope it won't take that. I think we've got a lot of folks in there who understand the criticality of that interchange, and we're going to get that done. And I know most of them, so that should help to grease the skids a bit. Unfortunately, they also know me, so. Yeah, I know.
Bite my tongue.
Thanks. The second thing is I wanted to bring this up for discussion. I had proposed during the State of the City address to go forward and implement the wired city internet concept. What we talked about is a multi-phased implementation approach, which would include the first phase being build out of a transport fiber network. So basically bundling your fiber and putting it up on poles, or basically building a point-to-point network within the city to connect all of our public buildings. So the City Hall, Energy Center, the Police Department, Future Justice Center, and perhaps a tie-in into our other facilities, and also the school district office.
How about fire department?
And the fire department, if they wish. Okay, there's a real chance that the fire department might be tenants at the Justice Center property at some point in the future. So, but we do need to address that. And the question is, as this is a new utility that the city would be implementing, would it make sense to utilize a portion of the utility money in order to be able to get this put in?
Define portion.
We don't know yet what the portion is. We have to do the analysis. But since this is core infrastructure and it's infrastructure that the city is using, and infrastructure that's needed in order to be able to put the access fiber in, because there's two pieces to this. One is the transport fiber, gets it out to the neighborhood points of presence. Once the neighborhood points of presence are dropped, then you take access fiber from there into the homes. Now, the second portion of that, we have another funding mechanism that we're exploring on that. But the first part of that, which is the point-to-point backbone, is something that we need to start thinking about how we're going to fund. Now, I'm going to mention the utility reserves because I believe that this is a prime project for those utility reserves to be used for. And wanted to mention it in front of the group because I wanted to have a group discussion on this. So I know that there's people are loath to use these utility funds, but this is a utility expense. All right, we will be building a fiber utility that will stand alongside our electric utility. So, having said that, I open the floor. I'd like to hear your thoughts on this.
Are you asking if we think it's proper, or have we already vetted whether or not it's legal to do this?
Oh, I believe that it is legal.
I believe?
It is a, yes, I know, I shouldn't say I believe. It is a utility. It is a utility. So utility funds can be used for utility expenses.
What defines a utility, Mayor?
A utility is any kind of public access infrastructure that's utilized by the public. So you're talking about roads.
Said public is not going to interact with it until after your backbones and all that stuff are done?
It's a means to facilitate that access. It is a backbone. The entire fiber system will be a utility.
Steve, so
yes,
assuming I'm in favor of your whole proposal, which I am actually, what other funding mechanisms would you propose if we were not in favor of this?
Well, we would
at
have
that point. Then what are some other?
Well, we'd have to look at other enterprise funds or look at general obligation debt. Is that correct?
Are we down to about $5 million right now in the kitty?
Okay, so let's work backwards from the funding capacity study. That said you had 20 million, minus 13.5 for Justice Center, minus 1.1 for the golf course, minus 0.2 and change for the pool. So you're down to about 2 million-ish, 2.5 million-ish in funding capacity if you don't want to do anything at all with your mill levy.
What's the payback time to the utilities if we borrow money to build it?
If we borrow money to build it, well, it depends on how much money we're going to be borrowing.
Right.
And we have to have a design for that. But the thing is, we need to know, kind of get a general idea of exactly how we're going to, what mechanisms are going to be available to us to be able to fund this before we go out and start designing it.
So I attended your State of the Union, which I believe all of us did, but I'm kind of caught off guard, so I'm not entirely prepared.
Sure, I
To
understand.
piggyback off of Councilman Melton's item, you're talking about borrowing money when I'm of the opinion that the free market should drive this, and I think Rich has talked about the free market numerous times in the last couple of years. The next question I had is what is the current amount of money in the reserves? Around 9 million, I believe, on the utility. Is that about right, Mark?
Are you talking about all of them combined?
No, just electric.
9 million's including our capital reserve fund. No?
What is it?
You
9
have,
plus?
you have 9 roughly in fund balance or reserve
Right.
in the electric fund and 3 million in the other one, capital improvement reserve.
Okay.
Capital development?
Whatever you call that.
CRRF.
Yeah.
The second question I'd have is if we had a catastrophic cataclysmic situation that knocked out our utility, what's the replacement cost for that? If we put all our money in one basket, how are we going to be able to finance day in and day out large ticket cost? Personally, I'm not going to go buy a Ferrari when I know I could not afford a hot water heater for my house.
So out of the ORRF, the operating reserve, the 9 mil, Laura is referring to, there's a formula for what you should keep in that.
Correct.
And then for the CRRF, that's your 3 million, and the reason it's 3 million is because that's what it'd take to replace one of the turbines.
One
If they
turbine.
got hit, one turbine, if they got hit by a tornado or something.
Not power lines across the city or transformers.
No, you're hoping that
vehicles, etc.
you're hoping disaster support comes in, and then
There's
insurance and
So
et
now
cetera.
we're going to be dependent on the government. When I've
But
heard in the
there's a
past
formula
that, carry on.
Well, I mean, there's a formula.
Yeah, I know the formula. I'm just saying we're flipping and flopping up here on the dais.
I don't.
As to what. Well, yeah, you're talking about spending money on something that is to be determined if it's needed versus taking care of the house that we have. I hear from the peanut gallery before I was elected that we're all about the free market, and Councilman Melton was just talking about privatizing the airport, which we can't do that to generate more money. I mean, it's just back and forth. That's kind of
No,
what I'm saying.
and I understand where you're coming from. We've looked at multiple different approaches to do this.
Again, you just caught me off guard, so I'm not prepared.
Standard ISP deployment, which is what you're talking about. Right now, the quote-unquote free market isn't interested in Gardner. And the reason why is because it's so expensive to put in a fiber network. That the barrier to entry is too high given the demographic and the population mix that's in this community.
But it's not expensive for us.
Here's the deal.
Okay.
Okay? Transport fiber is a minuscule portion of an entire fiber build-out.
Okay, so let's fast forward to the residents. Tell me what the residents are going to pay once you get your backbone in line and interconnect. Go ahead, Mark.
So, something I've been meaning to ask is, are we
Yes.
going to own the service?
We own it.
And we're going to provide said
No,
service down the
we
fiber?
are not going to
So
provide
that's completely different than our electric and water and sewer, because we own the infrastructure and we provide the service.
Yes.
Can I make a recommendation? This is,
We probably need a work
we
session on
need a
this.
work session on this.
Sounds
We're
like
not
it.
gonna get
Yes.
this right now. And I mean, Lee's, it's 2
Yes.
o'clock in the morning where he's at.
Yes, I understand.
So we still have an executive session, so let's, I would recommend, and you know, this is me, I love to talk. Let's move this to.
So moved.
Yeah.
I agree.
There is no move.
So.
There's no motion.
No, I know there's no motion, but I agree with Melton.
All right, so we have a consensus for a future work session on this?
Right.
Yes.
All right, I don't want it to be too long. 'Cause,
6 to 7.
We're going on for at least that long already, so let's
No.
just move it down the line. And you can prepare what your
Yeah.
vision.
Some numbers.
There's some,
Right.
there's some, yeah, we're gonna,
These guys
I can
don't
get
know
some
what I know.
preliminary, yeah, I know, you know
Right.
more
I know
than some
because you
folks.
shared with me, and I didn't even blast. That was a little embarrassing.
There's, and again, this is an out-of-the-box implementation. It's very innovative.
Yeah, it's wireless.
It's not wireless,
Interesting you say that.
but, well, wireless, there's a problem with wireless.
Okay.
No,
I know, we will talk about that. We will talk about that.
Very in the details.
Wrap the
Okay.
gavel.
All right.
All right, so we will, don't go after my gavel. All right, so we'll go ahead and discuss that in a future work session. Is there, do we have a time for a future work session on this? No, no, no.
Future work session.
April 1st?
There's already a work session on April the 2nd, so it would have to be April the 16th would be the earliest you could possibly do it. So there's
Okay,
already one on the
well,
2nd.
then we go, let's set up something for April 16th then. Yep. That'll give us plenty of time. We might even be able to have some more solid numbers on the transport fiber. Okay. Okay, I'm out of time for executive sessions. 50 on each? Okay. All right, I will entertain a motion on recessing into executive session.
So moved. Second.
Motion from Gorsuch, second Melton, that we recess into executive session pursuant to KSA 75-4319B2 to discuss matters related to attorney-client privilege regarding pending litigation, beginning at 9:40 p.m., returning at 9:55 p.m. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? We are in recess.
Yeah, so from point of daylight inside the house. So it comes to the wall, and you see light from that point.
Entertain a motion to resume regular session.
So moved. Second?
Motion, Melton, second, Gregorsek, that we resume regular session. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, I will entertain a motion to recess into executive session.
For
20 minutes.
20 minutes?
I'll say
Oh, okay, sorry. So moved.
All right.
Second.
Motion, Melton, second, Baldwin, that we recess into executive session pursuant to KSA 75-4319B2 to discuss matters related to attorney-client privilege regarding pending litigation, beginning at 9:56 p.m. and resuming regular session at 10:16 p.m. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
We are in recess.
one time, right?
I think we waited them out.
It's an early night too. I don't know what's wrong with that.
A couple of minutes.
On to the next one.
Okay.
How many minutes do we have?
2.5.
Three minutes, guys.
You know, next 16.
Am I supposed to meet you guys over there?
Tuesday, we'll fly out.
Yeah.
We're going for vacation.
Still. Because you said you're coming from Topeka.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we already did right.
A lot of them coming from Topeka, they're coming back to here, and like, 6 o'clock.
So I'll meet you over there. I just wanted, is there anything I need to bring?
You know what? Yes. You know that big layout we had that night with the 2 water features and all that, and the map we drew over there? Yes, I'd like to show them that. It's okay, it's the vision of it, you know, this is what we're thinking, tell us where we're wrong. You gotta show them that we've got a vision. It's not pretty, it's right. It's okay. We have vision. Look, I'll pimp it, don't worry, I'll be like, look, we're terrible drawings, we have ideas. So,
Is phenomenal.
that's what, hey, I'm not, so I'll be the perfect person to present it, so it'll be great. So we bring that and we roll it in and.
Or we could bring the overall,
Congratulations, that's awesome.
Just give us something to talk about. I'm gonna try to find out as much as I can.
Again, I already gave my card. Yeah. Thinks I'm like pretty careful. Whatever.
and that's what we need to. Okay. We not just.
Sure. Yeah, we did.
Well, I mean, they've got to do multiple reaches. I just need to.
We can talk about that, but the vision, the non-cons.
Then I'll bring. I've got.
Because they were also talking about next issue.
Speaking of football, Ryan, some of the young footballers in Real Madrid's group are just like Isco or Isco and those guys. Unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, just because, you know, we don't get much La Liga.
I choose my TV package based on soccer, not anything else. My wife hates it.
Yeah, I mean, we get all the EPL games, NBCs, and they run them. Sometimes they have regular.
Yeah, I have that sling thing. You all are Spanish football. I mean, it's
But, I mean,
$10
I do have on my favorites whenever Real is playing. Picks it up.
Yeah.
Come alongside us.
I mean, the fun from all those. He's just so awesome.
Yeah.
I
I mean, he's an all-around player. I mean, all-around footballer.
My wife likes watching him.
You're old enough to be his mom.
Like you get a peg in the ground out the south end. Not that
Well, you know, that's what America fails at.
We're about to start.
I know, but I think they're really put a peg in the ground there. They just started, everything over there just gets pushed away. Serious sign.
I entertain a motion to resume regular session.
So moved.
Second. Motion Melton, second Gregorsek, that we resume regular session. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
We are now in regular session. I would entertain a motion to enter into executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Baldwin, second Melton, that we recess into executive session pursuant to KSA 75-4319B1 to discuss the personnel matters related to non-elected personnel, beginning at 10:18 p.m. and returning to regular session at 10:48 p.m. It's a half hour. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are standing in recess.
That was a great buy and super fast. But a majority of their footballers are all organic.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
You talking soccer?
Yeah.
Of course. Talking about getting
done yet? Oh, one more minute. One more minute.
So what do you think?
I think it's a good idea,
Yeah.
but we gotta look at.
Yeah, no. But the endorsement thing is the.
That's the other, it's the partnership thing,
Yeah.
with the city, and I know Amy and I had a discussion about that. She's like, no one signed this. And I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah.
We can negotiate. All right, I'd entertain a motion to return to regular session.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Melton, second Baldwin, who's falling asleep over there, that we resume regular session. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are back in regular session. I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Melton, second Baldwin, that we adjourn. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
I hope nobody's opposed. We are now adjourned.
Hey, it's non-debating.
Yeah, that's what.
Somebody's got to lock up. Hotel.